Welcome to the Bladtcast, continuing our celebration of Bladtcast 500 with Bladtcast 501, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to keep counting until I get to 1,000. 6, 7. No, I won't do that. But I'm very excited because with me is the one and only Jeff Duray. And people might know Jeff Duray from his appearances on the Bladtcast. Jeff, how are you?
Hi. I don't think any recent fans know me.
No, it's been a while. It's because I think that the last episode that I did with Will, we talked about the country music concert we went to where I fell down and I got a really, really nasty bruise, and Will took me to the emergency room. And as an avid listener of the Bladtcast, I know you're well aware of all that.
Yep. I think I saw you after that, right? Because you had the bruise on the cut on your forehead.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did have the hat on and all that, and I did a reveal of it sometime later. But a big part of the reason why we haven't been doing the classic style episodes of the Bladtcast is that Will was traveling, and then I think I had this idea that, oh wow, why don't you guys, Will, why don't you go to Jeff's house and you guys can record there, and I'll pop in, on StreamYard or Zoom or something. And then he had the audacity to want to enjoy his trip and spend time with his wife. So, I guess he didn't put the Bladtcast number one in his heart. And that makes me say, well, Starling, he's changed. He's really changed.
Seriously, because this has always been his priority. Every day when I would see him at work, because I used to just go there all the time and see him, and we'd high five 80s style, and then he'd talk about, I can't wait to do another Bladtcast.
Of course,
it fills my heart with joy.
Yeah, and so much that his heart is so filled with joy. Joining us now for this installment of the Bladtcast, where we're celebrating Bladtcast 500, is the one, the only, the expertly mustachioed Will Starling, William J. Starling at Will Starling _ Will Starling of History Rated R, which I have fallen behind on, and I can't wait to catch up. Will Starling, how are you?
Great. Just realizing I'm looking at this email and it says 5 minutes before noon. So
that's all right.
5 minutes
I'm just trying to make everybody's schedule work for each other. And Will, I think this is really important for our visual listeners. Now, we know that the Bladtcast exists as audio only, but I really want people to see that mustache. When I first met you, Will, more than a decade ago, I don't think you could have grown a mustache. I think you could have injected the cream and the clear and all the steroids that were available over the counter at that point.
Yeah.
Do you think a decade ago you could have grown a mustache?
I do. Okay. Maybe not quite this much, but I would never let myself grow my facial hair out, really.
But there was a beard once, and I remember the beard didn't meet, right? Wasn't that the problem?
I'm still having that problem in some spots. I'm, using the ointments, trying to fill in the patchiness, but it's tough.
Body positivity, Will. You got to accept who you are. If you've got a patchy beard, then that's just...
Yeah. It's just there's no connection here, and it's very frustrating.
But I mean, this is a next level. This is, I don't know. To me, the Mount Rushmore of stashes includes Freddie Mercury. And I don't know. Somebody tell me a better stash than Freddie Mercury, and I'm willing to listen. Raleigh Fingers, Jeff, with the twisty,
Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck, yeah. Salvador Dali also with the handlebar twisty mustache. But yeah, Tom Selleck. I mean, when Tom Selleck did that era where he didn't have the mustache, the career. So, Will, are you here to announce that they're doing another reboot of Magnum PI, this time with you?
Starring me.
As Thomas Magnum. I'm so very excited.
They already did a reboot of it?
Yeah, they did. I know. Believe me, they did.
Is it still on television, or was
I don't know about that. But they did a reboot of MacGyver.
I know, yeah.
They had a reboot of Hawaii Five-0 for a long time, So what's old is new again, and that's why we're celebrating more than 500 episodes of the Bladtcast, because it is very old. and yet it is still very new. But we're all together for the first time, and I was kind of explaining to people that Will, you had a little bit of a walkabout, as Crocodile Dundee says. You had an extended road trip, didn't you?
I did. It was
And
long.
you were back on the East Coast.
Uh,
And
yeah.
is this coming as news to Jeff? Did you forget to go hang out with Jeff while you were out there?
Well, I tried to get a baseball game going, but they were busy, and I saw Coltrane briefly, and then I wasn't there much longer than that. I ended up having to come back to LA for a shoot and for my friend's wedding, like late May, early June. So there was like 12 days where I was sort of back in this area. So by the time I got back out there, it was like the baseball game, and then we packed up and we pretty much moved back. So I was hoping to be able to stay there the whole time. Of course, it was like the first thing I auditioned for when I got out there, I booked. And there's a part of me that's like, this is great, it's work. But then I was like, fuck. Yeah. Now I have to like lose part of my trip. So, but it was okay.
So you booked something. Is it something that we might see one day soon, or was it more?
I hope so. It was a series of commercials, so I assume they'll be on YouTube and some things whenever they're done.
Yeah. I think my favorite Will Sterling commercial was the online only Jack in the Box commercial that you did. But the Sean T in the purple shirt was also great. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking over Jeff. Jeff, just restate what you just said, sir.
I said, is it one of those ones where you're sexually eating the hamburger? Like we're all supposed to want to fuck you while you're eating the hamburger.
It was like Paris Hilton or somebody on the Mechanical Bull. That was, I think, a Carl's Jr. commercial.
Upton, Kate Upton or no?
Brooklyn Decker.
The one that married Justin Verlander. Do you know who I'm talking about? She was like super popular. It was like 2010, and that was like her commercial, and everyone was like, "Did you see that Carl's Jr. commercial?"
Yeah, but I didn't see the girl. I just stared at the hamburger.
Apparently it was Kate Upton, I guess.
It was Kate Upton.
Yeah. I do remember like the peak Kate Upton time, which was like right after college, right when I moved to LA.
Mm-hmm. But with that commercial, I'm telling you,
with that commercial.
I remember the what was the dude's magazine? She did this like sort of
Maxim
iconic cover, something like that,
or perhaps it was my favorite magazine, which is Morningwood Quarterly. That is. I like to start off my day with a nice Morningwood Quarterly. As we think back on the Bladtcast, and I'm talking about these hamburgers, I'm reminded. I wasn't planning to talk about this. But Will, I'm reminded of one of our earliest running bits that we promoted, and I think there's actually video for it. The Man of Steel versus Food Challenge. I think I have the name wrong.
Superman versus Food, I think it was.
Yeah. Do you remember what that was? And Jeff, I think this was before your time, but I think it's. I remember it very well. But do you remember what you ate for that challenge?
It was like Carl's Jr. had some like Man of Steel burger or something, right? And I think I ate 2 of them, but one of them Ken had made. He'd switched out the buns for donuts.
Krispy Kreme, original glazed, hot donuts. Yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to. Was it just the 2? It still lives, I think, on my YouTube page.
Yeah, I think it's on. It's like I didn't even have a YouTube page. That's how long ago it was. There was no Bladtcast. Once upon a time, there was an age where there was no Bladtcast YouTube page, and the world was better for it.
But that was like early.
That's like 2013, because I think that's when the Man of Steel came out, like 5 months into us doing the podcast, and then we really camped out on the fact that the next movie wasn't going to be called Batman vs Superman. We thought that was a dumb title, but
I was certain they were going to change the name.
And, and you know what? I still think they might. But tell us a little bit about your travels, Will. However much you want to say about why you came out, but just some of what you saw spending that much time in New England.
It was good. Casey came out late April. She flew out, and we started driving like May 2nd. And it took us 5 days to get out there. Stayed with some friends sort of along the way. Somebody in Salt Lake City, somebody in Colorado, and then randomly.
I'm sorry, let me just interject. In Salt Lake City, did you stay with Salt Lake Green Arrow?
I did, yes. Okay. Ollie Odinson, his new name is not SSC Green Arrow anymore. Now it's Ollie Odinson.
My apologies.
He's both Oliver and Thor.
I hate to misname anyone's cosplay, so
That's
my
okay.
apologies.
And then some La Quinta Inns in Des Moines, Iowa, and
Well, somebody's making the big podcast money.
somewhere
La
else
Quinta.
because they allow dogs. So we needed because we were
Oh.
driving with Charlie, so we had to stay at a place that allowed dogs. So we left on a Monday. We got into Cambridge on Friday, and then unpacked and things, and had a couple of days to like socialize with Casey's friends, and then I got COVID.
Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
So then I was in quarantine.
Well,
for
you don't tell me everything. What happened?
I was in quarantine for like 6 days. Luckily, it was like the week before her graduation stuff, so I didn't have to miss any of her graduation events at Harvard.
Was that your COVID cherry, as it were?
That was,
Oh.
yeah. So I'm still.
You
in
know,
that
they say you
90-day
never forget
window
your
now.
first time. Well,
I know. It was pretty mild. It was like, it was kind of like I don't know. First test I took, I had like some mild symptoms, but I was like, maybe this is just what it's like to like have a cold again. I haven't been sick in like over 2 years.
I just got a text from Liev. It's nothing compared to syphilis. So I guess that's, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, you got to get that syphilis vaccine.
So you had it mild.
I did.
Wait,
I
who's
did.
that back there behind you? Is that a cat?
Friend, it's my friend's dog, Paul.
Oh, okay. So again, I'm misspeciesing animals and creatures. I really thought it was a cat. I'm sorry.
No, it's a little dog. He doesn't want to be held.
Yeah. so basically, might as well be a cat. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's the thumbnail right there at 11 minutes and 37 seconds. Is Will holding up the dog? Who let the dogs out? Will Starling. So you didn't have COVID bad, but you had it in a strange environment.
Yeah.
So you had to stay away from Casey, I assume.
She'd already had it like a month and a half before me, so it wasn't majorly scary. And the cases at the time, I think, were really on the rise in Massachusetts. So everybody, it seemed like, was getting it around then, especially a lot of her classmates. And luckily, it was before graduation, so I could like go to all her stuff. But I was like, sitting in her apartment for, I think 5 days was what they asked people at the time, at least to quarantine for. So I did like, I think plus
and since then they've updated it to you have to stay home for 45 minutes. That's actually the latest regulations from the CDC. And honestly, it seems a little long to me. 45.
Honestly, that's not an episode of Stranger Things.
I guess we'll talk about media and content in a future episode. I want to focus on us, Team Bladtcast, who 2/3 of which I've kept off the show for a while. But I was explaining before you got here that really your travels were a big part of the reason why. I didn't want to ruin your trip. Be like, you should really make that. Although now that I know that you were sitting inside for 5 days, I was like,
that's true.
Probably could have done a Star Trek the original series rewatch podcast.
I watched the Lincoln Lawyer.
I love that movie.
The show, the Netflix show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
It's a good movie though.
It's fine. I want to see the movie.
I love McConaughey.
Yeah. It was fine. But yeah, so by the time I got out of quarantine, it was like a graduation events, like Monday through Friday that week. And then I flew back to LA on Friday, then was in Mexico, then was doing the shoot. And it was like, it ended up being not as much downtime. I was like, I've got 2 months. Yeah. It'd be great. The wedding I knew I was going to come back for, but I thought that was only going to be like 3 days, 4 days.
And the wedding was in Mexico, correct?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mexico.
Mexico. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then I flew back, I think on the 12th of July. Oh. No, June. I'm sorry. June. Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And then I drove back. I left on when did I leave? I got to Scottsdale where Casey's staying for the summer for work on 4th of July. It took me 4 days. So I left on the 1st.
All right. 1st. I love Scottsdale. If you haven't been, you need to have your cheat day, plan around it, get all your pumps in, and then go to the old-timey ice cream shop called the Sugar Bowl in downtown Scottsdale.
Okay.
There is a lot of original artwork from the comic strip Family Circus.
Okay.
Because the artist...
I feel like I remember you talking about this before.
So the artist who did that I guess, lived there at one point, and he would draw the Sugar Bowl into some of the, it's a single circle like comic strip,
Okay. Yeah.
Think of it as a Ziggy for kids, a more concise Dilbert. But it's the kind of like ice cream place I always wished they had in LA, but I'm glad they don't, for caloric intake reasons. So you're back now, and History Rated R hasn't missed a beat, so people can find that on all their favorite podcast platforms.
Got Dominica Saxon very involved. He tweeted about us.
He loves the show.
Yeah.
I think more than the Bladtcast, and that hurts. That really hurts, Dominicus, but that's all right. There's enough to go around.
There's a lot less half-clothed Zia on History Rated R, so it's probably not as appealing for a lot of people.
So far,
that's
a
true.
Lot less.
You know what?
Yeah.
It's not
and
too late.
By the way, if you enjoy our friend Zia, please go to her OnlyFans. It's Zia Land, and I get very uncomfortable with her Instagram because she has like censored versions of her pictures, but I still shouldn't be looking at them while I'm in line to drop off my kids at preschool.
I call it Instagram roulette, where when you're with your partner or spouse or whoever it is, and you open Instagram, it's like, is it going to be somebody who I'm friends with who posts risque photos, or is it going to be something appropriate? And half the time, it's like half naked cosplay people.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, I guess with my wife, she at least knows Zia, and she, she's like, oh, okay, I guess, she's making a living. So Jeff, Will seems like he was around for a long time. Did he spend time with you? I know he saw you already earlier in the year, and we talked about it. You guys didn't take my advice and go to the 99 Steakhouse, but maybe next time. But did you guys get to hang out? I'm asking Jeff because I feel like I feel like we'll get the real skinny on this story here from Jeff.
It's not much of a story, no.
But I know that Will went to a Red Sox game, and you just weren't able to go the day that he could go, right? I mean, that wasn't. You guys aren't feuding, are you?
No, well, I mean, it comes down to this. I'm unwell. Remember how I mentioned that? Like, I had to be on medications and agoraphobia and not wanting to leave my house. That's like a real problem for me. So like, I don't go places. So I didn't want to go out. So I made up an excuse.
You think that a baseball game with 35,000 people?
That is a very busy place. Yeah.
You think that would make you uncomfortable? More comfortable than being in a house with like 4 people?
I went to the North End because I had to have dinner with Natasha's dad who came, and I almost had a fucking panic attack just like going out. So yeah, I don't go places anymore.
I mean, we were out there last time I was there, and it seemed like it was okay. Was that April or? So?
I mean, that's because I don't like show how I'm feeling.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I feel like it would have been a lot easier to just try and get together and podcast. I felt like I was letting you guys all have your adventures, and Will with his COVID, and Jeff, you had COVID earlier in the year, and I had it. It's all old hat for us. So you were listening to some David Bowie when we first connected. So is there any kind of comfort in going into like a record store, or do you do it all like online and you just have it show up at the house? There's no wrong answer to this, by the way. I like both experiences very much.
So I haven't gotten any records in like over a month for like pretty much this very reason in part. So I just haven't gotten anything. Because I was going to this one record shop, but it was just like, I just haven't gone. The owner's really cool though, so it's usually fine when I'm there. It is super tiny and like super busy. Yeah. So it's like not busy in terms of people, except sometimes, but it's like there's almost nowhere to walk, and it's like there's stuff on the ground, but you can't bend over to actually get to it. So it's like you can find a lot of great records there, but it's not easy to navigate. So I like to go when there's likely not going to be anybody else there, but then I end up having like these several hour long conversations with the guy who owns the place because he's super chill. So it's like it's a really nice place to go when I can go there. But it's like I yeah, it's I mean, to describe how it is for me, it's basically like I'll have to know that I'm planning to go there in advance. I'll have planned on going there for like multiple days, and then just like hit a point where I'm like, nah, I'm not leaving the house today. Like, fuck that. And then I'll just like forget about it. And then eventually one day I'll be like, all right, today is the day. I'll flip a coin, and the coin will say I have to go. And I'll be like, all right, time to go. And I'll like go to the shop. And then it's like fine sometimes when I'm there and everything's like chill. But it's like if somebody else comes in, and the weird thing for me with this social anxiety is that it's almost like the after effects of going out are what's the worst. So it's like, and if I go out and I hang out and talk to people, then I spend the next day or two thinking about every single thing I said and just think about how fucking stupid it was. And so it gets really upsetting. And so it's just...
So does it help kind of normalize that feeling if like you do talk to the guy at the record store for a while, you're not going to feel like, oh, what I talked to him about was stupid because we really focused and we just talked about music, we talked about records, and maybe he recommended something, or is even that an uncomfortable sort of
same thing. I'll still like be like, oh my God, I can't believe I said this. Oh, I can't believe I said the wrong name for that person, or like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this or that, or said this thing, just whatever. It's like it's ridiculous how meticulously I'll tear myself down.
Right. And I mean, usually that's what you have, friends like us for, is to tear each other down. But then when you do it to yourself, that's a lot less fun. You're talking about going to record stores, and I had a trip myself, not as long as Will's. I was back in the New York area for about 2 weeks, and I went to I actually drove out to near where I grew up, and I went to a couple of my favorite record stores. One of them in Middletown, New York, is called Rock Fantasy. And they had like added this huge pinball room, and it's really cool. And like the guy who runs it was like the guy who ran it, when I was a kid and I was in high school.
See the pinball wizard?
He was the pinball wizard. And I
Elton
went
John
to
one.
Yeah, of course. That's the only one that matters. I went to an in-store there for the release of Guns N' Roses' The Spaghetti Incident covers album. But I always loved that store, and I got a lot of posters there. My Kiss bootleg of the first Kiss concert I went to, in 1990 in Middletown, New York. I bought the VHS there for $20 in 1990, only about a month later.
That was the Hot in the Shade, right?
That was the Hot in the Shade tour.
So and somebody was just in the audience with their like VHS camera, just like
they had it set up on like a tripod. And it was clearly somebody who worked there filmed it because, it was just in the back.
Right.
And and you can find that show on YouTube still to this day.
Okay.
So I went there, and he wasn't coming into the shop. He's a little bit older. So the girl who's working there was like, he hasn't really come by since COVID. I'm like, all right, I really wanted to see Steve. That's his name, Steve. I follow him on Instagram. He does a show. I was like, I was going to talk to him. He would I was wondering, I'm like, I haven't been in here in like 15 years. I wonder if he'll remember me as like the guy who always came in to talk to him about Alice Cooper and to a lesser extent Kiss. But the Alice Cooper stuff was harder to find. Kiss stuff you can find.
Yeah.
And like so I didn't get to interact with him. And then I went to another record store in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey, Flipside. And the guy who runs that store, I think grunted once at my friend and I. We tried to make small talk with him, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna talk records, and like, boy, the shop has like so much of the old stuff, and all they did is just pack. It's like the inventory they had the last time I was there, say 1995, was all there, and they had just added twice as much. So it's kind of like what Jeff's talking about, as you were describing the record store you went to. I could barely walk around. We tried to talk to the guy. He was such a dick. And I was just like, all right, so this is really not what I wanted either, but I did go to Forbidden Planet, the comic book store in Manhattan, and everybody was really nice there. So finally somebody would let me talk to them, but this record store that I'm talking about, Jeff, the fact that this guy doesn't talk might have actually been good, and it's filled with records. But I will tell you, There was nobody in there, nobody coming in, nobody going out. It was just us, really. So
I think they probably do a lot of online
yeah,
business because it's like
I
this
agree.
guy, he talks about, so it's fun. Yeah, I think it's partly a sales tactic, but I do think he likes me. So I do think I get good deals on this stuff where it's like he'll tell me with every single record what he would sell it online for, and then always sells it to me at half the price of whatever he would sell it online for. So it's basically like if you're buying records online, you're getting jacked like on whatever you're buying. Like they because for the way he described it, it's like the amount of money he has to spend on packaging and getting it shipped back if there's any minor flaw, because the people who like buy those are like such pain in the asses versus people who come into the store. It's just like, I will sell it to you for half the price. Like, have fun.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you ever feel like he's that's how he also gets your business a little bit? Like, yeah, if I sold this online, I could get like $200 for it, but I'll sell it to you for 100.
I think, I would think that way if it weren't for the fact that I like walk up to him with a stack of like 16 records and he'll be like, we'll hold this one for another time. Like, because he knows that I'm just like being ridiculous.
What's just, even if it's, a month or 2 months ago, what are a couple of things that you found recently that you were like, oh, hey, this is cool, like something you'd been looking for, or is it okay? Let's just something you'd been looking for. Let me ask that question first.
Something I've been looking for that I found.
Some say that I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Right back to you, Jeff.
I mean, some of the really cool ones that I got recently that were just like sitting out. I got, speaking of Bowie, Hunky Dory, like original press of Hunky Dory was just like somewhere out near Coltrane, A Love Supreme. Young
so
American.
You mean a record by Ken Walter, former associate producer of the Dennis Miller Show. Yes. He put out an album that you bought. I didn't even realize
under the guise of John Coltrane. He released an album called A Love Supreme that somehow predated him. And
so Coltrane's Love is a Love Supreme.
It's true. It's true.
But there's some that it's like I've found that he then takes, and I almost am like, oh, I'm finding too much good stuff. Yeah. Like there was I found a Aretha Franklin, what was it, Lady? Well, it was one of the Aretha Franklin albums that I was looking for, but it was like this super unique early label press where it's like this blue and green instead of the normal like orange and whatever. So he was like, that was one of the ones where he's like, maybe we'll just I'll just hold on to this. You don't need, this one's going to be expensive, so you don't want this one. Is what.
You mentioned Aretha Franklin, and I recently had a conversation with an author who had written a book about Isaac Hayes, and one of the things that he talked about was Otis Redding, who, of course, originally did Respect, and he hated the Aretha Franklin version of that song. It obviously made him a lot of money, but one of the reasons he hated it is that she added the RESPECT, the where you spell it out, the sock it to me, and he hated that. But because people got used to it, when he performed it live, he had to add the sock it to me, and so it was just like, oh god. And he also seems like a really miserable guy, Otis Redding. So I'm looking forward to reading a book about him sometime soon. Actually,
well, he's dead, so if it makes you feel better.
Well, yeah, he was sitting at the dock of the bay. By the way, Will did share some very important information with me for
GQ. That was the magazine. Yeah,
the GQ
I remember
magazine.
that on the newsstands at the Ralphs by off of La Brea.
Oh, so this was so you were out of college. I could just imagine, Lil Will Sterling being at a supermarket.
It was like that summer. I think
having his eyes covered.
I think that was 2010. Let's see. Does it say?
Yeah, good old. I just see a special issue on there.
Yeah, so July 2012. Oh, okay. So a couple years after college, 2 years after college.
So
it's the 10th anniversary of this cover. Look at us, July 2022, celebrating beautiful. Kate Upton's,
and it's like the 9th and a half anniversary of the Bladtcast. We've done 500 plus shows. We're all talking together, and I didn't even ask Liev to join us today. Do you know why I didn't ask him to join us today?
Why?
He's getting married in Hawaii today.
Today?
Yeah, today. On a Wednesday.
My favorite thing is to comment on his pictures and remind him that we didn't get invited.
Yeah,
like, is this the wedding? When's the wedding coming that we didn't get invited to?
Yeah, I was invited in the way of like, but you wouldn't come, right? And I'm like, no, I wouldn't. So he didn't send me an invitation because I talked to him about it, that I would love to go. It's in Hawaii. Yeah. But I'm like, I also know that I can't go to a wedding in Hawaii on a Wednesday.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
No, I did. Believe me, I knew. So, but in any case, Will, we alluded to the fact that when you were out there, you went to a Red Sox game, and I know you have a hat now. So you have...
I've had it since last April. I've had it for over a year.
Wow.
This Red Sox hat. Yeah. Because when I bought it at the airport, it was the first time I was in Boston. I was coming back. I'd had like a half good time and a half miserable time visiting a friend that I'm like no longer speaking to. And when I was in the airport, I just like felt like I needed to hide. And I was like, I need to buy a hat just so I can like sit here and sadly eat my airport Wahlburgers and drink this beer. And that's why I bought that Red Sox hat. Not because I'd seen them or been partial to them, but it was all part of
just to hide those sad eyes.
Hide the sad eyes. But now, big fan. I saw them once.
Fun fact, that's actually why every man in Boston wears a Red Sox hat, to hide their sad eyes.
To hide. Yeah.
They're just because they're all crying on the inside and they're just praying to God it doesn't come to the outside so that they get beat up.
Like, what is that, a tear on your face? Yeah.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. So what did you think of Fenway? I know. So did you just meet up with Coltrane there? I know. I saw a photo. I think you texted me a photo.
He met us there. I did. Yeah. He met us there. It was also because originally when I had been there just before, I was like me, Jeff, and Natasha and Ken were all together, and I was like, oh, I'd love to go to a game when I'm back. And I was thinking like, okay, I'll just invite like my friends and we'll do something small. And Casey was like, oh, a bunch of people from Harvard have been wanting to go all year, and we haven't planned like a big group Red Sox thing. So like it went from me thinking it was gonna be like 5 people to just Ken and then like 25 Harvard people. There was a lot of her friends and other people from the department. Yeah, he really missed out. I mean, they're all cool. They're all cool. Like nobody's like typical Harvard-y people, but it was all, people from her class. And I mean, I was friends with them, or as much as a spouse of somebody can be friends with them, their friends. But it ended up being a good time. Me and Ken just kind of hung out, and I had some beers and a hot dog and
a Fenway Frank, I believe they're called.
A Fenway Frank. And it was from a specific Saviners or something, butcher shop. They had like a little kiosk there. Yeah, which is like, I ordered a duck from there for Christmas, Saviners Butcher Shop in Cambridge.
I thought you were going to say you ordered a duck from Fenway.
No.
Christmas.
And then kind of once the game was over, we just like all left. A lot of the other kids like went out to like keep drinking and stuff. But I don't know, by the time we got like to the end of the trip or even midway through June, like with the wedding, with the graduation, with like, I had like been to so many bars and parties and drink that I was just like, I can't socialize anymore. So, the last week that I was there was very quiet because we were packing up, and I was like, I can't really.
Yeah, I've had fun, going to Fenway with a group of people, and like, is that Lansdowne Street down there, or I know there's those bars that are right next to Fenway.
Yeah.
Like the Cask and Flagon, and just drinking way too much. My friend Brad, who Will knows a little bit, and who lives in Melbourne now, but he's still from Boston. And we were out there for his wedding, like 8 years ago. But we went to a Red Sox game during that, and there was just way too much, drinking before the game. But that's because it costs so much at the game. Why would you drink? I had a friend at the All-Star game at Dodger Stadium yesterday, and they posted a photo of the large commemorative cup Coke Zero that they bought for $15.50. So,
but they get to keep the cup,
and there's no alcohol in that.
That's true. Yeah, but the beers are like fucking $13. The michelada is like $15. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and also the worst hot dogs on the face of the earth are sold at Dodger Stadium.
The Dodger dog.
The Dodger dogs. which were never good, but then they stopped having an agreement with Farmer John's, and they now have some other brand, and it's so much worse. The all beef ones are tolerable, but the actual classic Dodger dogs you might as well eat them with the foil still on. But Jeff, you were in LA for a long time. Did you ever take a plunge and bite into a Dodger dog, or were you smarter than I was?
I'm pretty sure I went to that one Dodgers game with you on. I just ate my ass off. That was all I cared about, was just eating the overpriced concessions. So
It is the best
sure,
part.
I ate
I
one of
agree.
those garbage dogs. I loved every minute of it. Rubbery and tasteless.
Well, I do remember that when you were leaving town, I coordinated with Agent Romanoff. I wanted to just get some nice food sent to you. And he's like, well, he really loves Doghouse. And I'm like, you know what? I love Doghouse too.
I fucking miss Doghouse. Damn.
Doghouse. I forgot about Doghouse.
I've been making my own split top dogs.
Oh, sweet.
On the cast iron. So that's been pretty nice.
That's cool.
I've got a podcast recording, sort of pseudo live event at Pink's tomorrow. So I will be eating Pink's hot dogs.
You let me know if they still have a picture of Dennis up there. I think it's been taken down. I think they've cycled through to, let's just say, more relevant.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I mean, the people who own it are just they're older.
Well, yeah, anybody who was a fan of Dennis was a fan of old references, so they likely will keep his picture up for a long time.
That's
great point.
Dennis has become he now is the old reference.
Exactly.
Salman and I drove up about a month ago, and we had lunch with him, and it was delightful to see him. And
where's he living now? In another mansion?
Oh, he's still up in Montecito. He just doesn't live in that house that he sold to Ellen. This is not inside information. It's publicly reported.
Yeah. Did they buy another house, or they're just renting a?
No, I think that the last I knew they were renting. Just kind of figuring it out. His son did a show for Amazon with Sissy Spacek and J.K. Simmons. And now I forget the name of it. I watched a couple of them, and I thought it was actually very good as an interesting concept.
He's an actor?
No, he's a showrunner. He wrote a show.
Oh, shit.
Holden did.
Okay.
Yeah, and I cannot remember the name of the show, but I know that it's on Amazon. How many shows could they possibly have? It's called Night Sky. And
I watched the first episode or two of that. It was all right.
Yeah, I kind of want to get. I wish I could find out. I couldn't text Dennis and be like, "Look, how many episodes until it gets into what's really happening?" Because it was a little slow, and I just want to. I'll keep watching. It's like that show Severance on Apple TV Plus. I'm very interested in it, but it's so quiet. 100% of the time I fall asleep and have to rewind it. It's not a bad show. It is a show I cannot stay awake during.
I think Night Sky got canceled. Actually. I thought
if Night Sky got canceled, it's still out there. They didn't yank the episodes down. It's not like reruns of Amos and Andy. You can still find them. It's not Song of the South.
You don't know that. You said you haven't watched it.
That's true. I hope there's an Uncle Remus character halfway through.
Wow, they made a lot of episodes.
They made 10 of Night Sky.
I'm looking at something that says there were 27 episodes as of 2016. So this is incorrect.
Okay, so this is not that show.
I don't know what I'm looking at.
He's looking at Falling Sky.
That actually might be what you're looking, or Falling Skies or something like that. So you watched a little bit of that, Jeff, and
which one?
Night Sky, but
the one with Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, right? The night.
No, that's the Barbie movie.
I'm
having trouble keeping it all straight. Well, so you watched a couple of those. What you always seem to know what's great on the streaming services, because you sample a lot more than I have time to. So what have you seen? We can talk about stuff that sucks another time, but what's something you've seen recently, Jeff, that you're like, oh, this was really good? It could be a movie, it could be a show, it could be whatever.
Good question. Something that's currently airing. I'm really enjoying The Old Man, or whatever it is, Old Guy, with Jeff Bridges and John Lithgow. I have not seen that, but you're enjoying it. Okay. The dialogue has a very play-like whoever wrote it clearly writes plays or wanted to write plays, because there'll be scenes between John Lithgow and Aaliyah Shawkat specifically that just go on with these like long monologue dialogues between each of them, and it's clearly written for the stage, or like written by somebody like it would be performed on the stage, kind of a thing.
Right.
So
it's
good.
It's like that David Mamet style where you're like, wow, they each like they had like 4 pages of dialogue each.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
It's just like one of those, oh wow, they're incredibly verbose and very well spoken and take incredible dramatic pauses from these off the cuff speeches. It's fascinating. But it's a good show. The premise and the characters are all good. I enjoyed the most recent season of The Boys. I thought that was fun.
I've still never seen that.
I still haven't jumped into it. It's interesting that neither Will nor I have.
As
it's
superhero
not like
people, I've never watched.
I'm 100% sure I will enjoy it too. I just haven't.
It's really gory and gruesome, but I mean, it's a really good look at what if Superman was a little bit more human, a little bit more fallible, and then therefore a fucking dickhead because he's like the most powerful person around and nobody can stop him, kind of a thing. But it's not just like this, oh no, we all have to cower and hide, because it's like he wants to be loved. The Homelander character is more complex, and it makes it a much more interesting like villain, right? Or foil overall.
From afar, it feels like, what if the Justice League were the brothers at the Teak House on your college campus, or SIGEP, or I don't know that many fraternities. Sorry.
I mean, to me, it just seems more like human, frankly, because it's like, yes, the stuff that they're doing is fucked up and debaucherous and violent, but the reality is, like, if people had the power to rip other people's arms off without meaning to, it would fucking happen all the time. Because people aren't that careful. Like, people would be given that power and they wouldn't be responsible with it, as we've seen with the many people in power in many places that are completely irresponsible with it. So I think it's almost more honest in a lot of ways with the way that they interact with things, right? Like, you'll have a situation where people are fighting and then somebody goes live streaming, because that's almost more realistic to like what's happening in our world, and people think, oh, whoa, I'm just kidding, I didn't mean to do that, shit like that. So I liked that one.
Let me just interject with Will. If you had super strength, would you be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I ripped your arms off. It was completely by accident. I was not trying to rip your arms off and cause, it's like total whoops.
Depends on who I'm accidentally ripping the arms off.
That's kind of, I'm not going to name anyone.
Yeah.
I'm honestly not even thinking of anyone.
I mean, it would totally happen by accident. But
we all have people in our lives that if we had ripped off their arms, we would have been like, oh shit, that was so funny. They were like, oh my God, my arms, I'm bleeding everywhere,
They die.
So let's see. So these seem like all shows that are on Amazon Prime, though. It's like all we've...
Old on Hulu, I think, because I went on Hulu to watch that show specifically and fell into another show instead.
What show did you fall into, and was it good?
The Bear, which is excellent, and I love
I've heard that's great too.
That is a good one too.
I can't remember last time I watched a show twice, and I'm already like half. It's only 8 episodes, but I've already rewatched like the first 4 episodes, and we'll finish it again.
Wow.
It's so great.
I've kind of watched Severance twice because I always fall asleep during it. So
that was me. That was like me and Obi-Wan. I feel like I kept falling asleep, and I only ever watched the first 3 episodes, and then it was like I quit. There's been plenty of things I've been falling asleep through trying to watch things.
What were some other ones you were going to mention, Jeff?
Paramount Plus. Players. It's hilarious. It's really good. So the guy who made American Vandal, did you ever watch that?
Mm-mm.
That's another one you should definitely check out, because it's like this mockumentary, but it's almost believable, and it's really funny. The American Vandal. Same thing goes with Players, but I think Players is even more interesting, because it's like, it is explaining some things that are the realities of like streaming and professional video game stuff. Because the idea is it's like a professional video game team for League of Legends, and it's like this mockumentary going into how they form the team and the people on the team and their personalities. But it's like, it's well written, and the acting and everything is very well done, I think. We've been really enjoying that one. Speaking of Apple Plus, Shining Girls with Kate Moss.
Elizabeth Moss.
Elizabeth Moss. I always call her Kate Moss. Elizabeth Moss. I liked that one. I thought that was pretty fascinating. Have you watched that at all?
No, I see it. So we're trying to get through Severance because we only pay for Apple TV Plus when Ted Lasso's around. So we have because my wife's in the Writers Guild, we have sort of the for your consideration version of it. So we're like, well, we got to finish this show before it expires. I think at the end of August. And it's like, all right, I want to move on to that show. There's some other things I want to see, but it's just staying awake and watching Severance is the real challenge.
For sure.
But so yeah, Elizabeth Moss has that show. She also has Handmaid's Tale, and a lot of people know her from Mad Men. But
I'm not as into Handmaid's Tale. I know a lot of people love it. It wasn't for me. It was just I got bored. I couldn't connect. I understand the plight and like the horrible shit.
Did you feel like it was too positive of an outlook on society? And
I think she was just complaining too much. It's like, know your place. Shut your mouth, you birther.
It's not what I was trying for, but I'll take it. We'll allow it on the Bladtcast.
I think, frankly, it's like it's a thing that clearly. I just think I couldn't relate to the overarching story, which is like the plight of women and, being forced into this role as like, you're a servant because you can give birth. So I think it's a good show. I thought it was fine. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I just didn't connect to it. So I was just like, it's not for me. I got bored.
My wife had to give up on it because it was just too much. You know what I mean? Like, there's watching, grim subject matter. There's seeing things that are, and then there's times where you're just like, I'm just like way too bummed out after it. So
That's true.
I get that. You were talking about Paramount Plus, and regular listeners of the Bladtcast know we recently did a whole episode on this, but the Paramount Plus / CBS All Access Star Trek shows have been really hit or miss, but Star Trek Strange New Worlds is fantastic, and it is like feels the most like the old Star Trek that they've ever done on this service, and probably in like 30 years. It's in terms of television. The casting is great. They do not cut any corners on the effects, which is very important. Star Trek Picard is literally one of the worst television viewing experiences I've ever had in my entire life, of a bad show that I watched all the way to the end because I had this dumb idea that I was going to do an after show for it. So I had to stick with it. But Strange New Worlds is the opposite. What were you going to say?
I've been wanting to check it out, but I fell off of what was the main show that I started watching? The one that we
Discovery.
went to Discovery.
Yeah, we went to a panel on Discovery.
Yeah, I loved Discovery, but I just fell off of it because it's like, I think it's awesome that I'm seeing throughout, everywhere proliferated in my media, like more LGBTQ plus stuff. Like I'm seeing it in all my video games, and that's great. With Discovery, it felt like the same problem I had with Glee, where like the storylines just feel trite, like they don't go anywhere. They're just about that community. Right? With Glee, in the first season, the gay character came out 3 times. It's like, we don't need 3 coming out episodes. And with Star Trek, it just felt like they got to a point where every episode was like an allegory for that. And I just was like, I don't know, it lost me. Well, I didn't understand where they were coming from with the
I know. Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. But I thought that there, you do get into that sometimes, like the modern era of Doctor Who. There was a point where every side character, I think that there's a great level of inclusion, and obviously I'm looking at this in a different way. I'll be interested to know what Will thinks, and you don't have to have seen any of these things, but just more of the concept. But with Doctor Who, it was like every character, it seemed like the first couple seasons since Jodie Whittaker took over, every character was in a same-sex relationship, and they never had heterosexual characters. And I thought that did a disservice. I was talking to my friend Z about this recently on this show, and I was just like, I think you're like putting too much focus on it. It's like everything, but I'm like, I don't know, is that making up for lost time because you didn't have any of that representation? So do you feel like you do it? I think it's great that Discovery actually has a trans character, and the way that they handled it, I thought I thought it was great. It's actually, it's a good character. The guy from Rent is great on that show. The guy from My So-Called Life is great on that show. I think that the problem with that show is more introducing so many new characters, regardless of the way they identify or their orientation, and just not focusing on characters who've been on it from the beginning. There's characters on The Bridge, I don't even know their name, and they've been on all 4 or 5 seasons.
For sure.
Finish your thought, and then I want to ask Will something.
Well, speaking to exactly that, it kind of reminded me, like, so the storyline with I can't remember any character's name. So the doctor, the main scientist guy that you're talking about from Rent, his storyline with his
Dr. Culber is the character's name. Anthony Rapp is the actor. Yeah,
Anthony Rapp. Yes, his storyline with his partner made so much sense. It was like interwoven with the first seasons, and it was great because it seemed like there was like gravitas to their stories. Then we got to the one where the trans character, and then that other trans one. She was in, or he's in the OA. And then
I don't know that show, but I know the character you're talking about.
Yeah, they've got like the thingies on their head where there's like multiple people inside of them. But it's like they had their relationship, and it just felt like so boring and shitty. And maybe it's just the actors weren't conveying something, but it was just like, I just couldn't, I care less. And they just kept giving them more and more scenes about their stuff. And I just was like, ugh.
Well, yeah. And that's where I feel it was at the expense of characters I was more interested in. And that might've been a casting problem. So Will, when you have a couple of, straight guys trying to navigate, what do you think this idea of, specifically, and you don't need to have watched any of the Doctor Who, literally you don't need to have watched it. But to understand the idea, what's the right point for this where, and don't forget to unmute yourself, where it's like, oh no, this is good to have the representation. And is there a way of like, oh, it shouldn't be so many characters. It should just be part of like the group, and some of them are gay, some of them are trans, some of them are this, some or I don't know. So as someone I think better equipped to process this stuff, what do you think works for you personally?
I mean, it's ever since I've always wanted to incorporate these kinds of characters into stories, but do it in a way that's just sort of inherently part of a larger story and not so much necessarily the focus, although sometimes it needs to be. I think it's easier said than done to say like, oh, these people just so happen to be gay or trans or lesbian or whatever it is. Isn't that great? Because then it's easy for people to sort of ignore, I think. But at the same time, it can feel super forced and feel a little obnoxious to the point where it's like, I really wish these people were just, it's totally fine if they're in any kind of queer relationship, but like, it doesn't have to constantly be the focus of the story or their hardship. It's like, there's a lot of stories historically where it's like all they want to do is focus on like how hard it was, or the trauma, or the abuse, or being in the closet, or and it's like it doesn't always have to revolve around that. Like, what if they were fine? What if their parents cared about them and accepted them, and it wasn't this horrible? Like, I think people get caught up in also like, oh, how difficult it must be. But there's a time and a place. I think it depends on the content. I think when it's an episode or it's certain characters and it's explored, and it fits with the overall narrative, then yes. But if it feels forced, that's probably because it is. And even, I remember I watched the first Jodie Whittaker season of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And I don't recall it being, I remember feeling like there was a lot of moments in general that felt really forced, not just queer storylines, but like, because it can also get a little like, whitey when they're going back and like, we're gonna hang out with Rosa Parks, and I'm like, you're saying this like white woman essentially helped Rosa, like now it's like, well,
yeah. No. And let's cast a British guy as Martin Luther King.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I don't know. I don't think there's one right answer or a wrong answer, but I do know that it can feel, when it feels heavy-handed, it's probably because it is. Like,
no, I think you put your finger on something though, that it's like, a lot of aspects of the storytelling, and we're leaning on Doctor Who in particular right now, haven't been strong. So you're not able to navigate that stuff well either. And the character on Discovery you're talking about, their name is Adira, and that's a trans character, and then I guess gray is the non-binary, but then it's also when you sort of have the memories of generations of different genders. It's sort of made for an interesting thing. I think that with that story in particular, it's a casting problem, and I don't think that either actor is particularly strong. And there's some much better actors that probably have some better stories. But with Discovery in the most recent season, I mean, 3 less episodes would have been perfect. It just, they dragged out this season-long arc, and I'm like, it's interesting, but I'm kind of over it already. And then I was talking to our pal Jason Blair about Strange New Worlds, and it was only 10 episodes, and I was like, why didn't they take those 3 extra episodes from Discovery and give it to the better show? But that's not the way it worked out. So that's something that I've enjoyed. I think that you can just sort of watch Strange New Worlds with just familiarity of Star Trek in general. It does tie into the second season. It's the same cast from season 2 of Discovery. Anson Mount is Captain Pike, who's fantastic. And I think
he was really good in Multiverse of Madness. Like, every line he delivered was phenomenal.
So you mean when his head exploded? Yeah. It was great. Nobody's head exploded better than his in the movie. And, that's a great way to set up our next episode, because there is a list of things that Will Sterling has not enjoyed in recent months, some of which I haven't seen. I'm in the middle of season 2 of Stranger Things. I don't know if I'm going to start it over. I may, but so that's like I think that might be a whole Lucy ago, or maybe Lucy was
2.
Yeah, I liked the season 1, and
I
then
remember
season
spoiling
2,
part of season 2 for you, which I hope by now you've forgotten.
I actually don't remember.
There you go.
So
that was like
great.
2-3 years ago that I spoiled.
The
that
upside down is actually right side up. Oh, it's motherfucker!
True. Where are the monsters? Yeah.
Well, you know what? Too true. So so there's some stuff that I have seen, and I always like these conversations. It's fun when we disagree. It can be fun to agree a little bit sometimes. So for people that's the content that they come to the Bladtcast for, our next episode is going to be some more of that. It'll be the what do they have in 1984, the book, not the year, not that you guys would remember the year. They have like a 10-minute hate, I think is what they call it. I'll have to look it up so that I can seem more literate. But I think that, every day they get all of their anger out. It's kind of the same idea as the Purge. You have the night where you can go out and kill everybody. If you have the 10-minute hate, your life is going to be better because you don't keep it bottled inside. It's not, I don't think it's violent. I think you just get to yell. And so maybe our next episode of the Bladtcast will be a 10-minute hate. But if people want to have less hate in their lives, although I think there's probably some hate on History Rated R, right? Will, there's some hate directed at certain figures throughout history.
Episode wise?
No, just characters that get talked about. Sometimes they come up and like, oh, I hate this guy,
Oh yes, certainly. There's a lot. There's
I kind of like both Roosevelts. I like when you and Craig talk about Teddy and FDR, but
Craig hates FDR. So
no, I know he does. That's why I enjoy it so much. I like that he comes from a place where he doesn't like him. Yeah,
such an ableist.
Yeah, that fucking asshole.
But where can people find History Rated R, and how can they follow it on Instagram, Will?
Wherever you get your podcasts, it's on Instagram at History Rated R. Stitcher. I think it's a Stitcher. Spotify.
I don't even know if I'm on Stitcher.
That used to be my primary app, and now I'm working on a show in partnership with Stitcher, but I don't work for Stitcher. But I'm like, oh right, I used to use
Stitcher.
Yeah.
Well, I think that people can find that there, and at Will Sterling _ we've given up hope on getting the at Will Sterling name, right? I mean, that guy's just not going to give it up.
I feel like it's been at Will Sterling _ for so long that now it's one of those things that if I remove it, it's going to fuck
That's your
people.
brand.
Yeah.
Jeff, I know you don't like to be found on social media. I know Do-Ray Jeff, he looks for a little bit of attention now and then, so people can look for him. But do you have a Jerry Springer style final thought for our audience before we say goodbye for this episode of the Bladtcast?
Teach your children well.
Well said. And we will see you and your children Don't forget to follow me on social media, Christian DMZ. Next time on the Bladtcast. Welcome to the Bladtcast. Very exciting to be back again. 2 consecutive shows with at Will Starling _. He's up there for our visual listeners. And I am, of course, in the center square, but over there is the one and only Jeff Duray, not to be confused with Duray Jeff. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello.
It was like, I'm just going to crack my knuckles. And yes, I am Paul Lind in the center square. I don't do the voice as well as Will. So why don't you just say something as Paul Lind and I'll pretend it's me.
Oh, geez, Christian, you're in the center square.
And of course, it's also Roger on American Dad.
Exactly. That's really
it's
just
literally the same voice. Yeah. So we're here to talk about a lot of things. You know, we're catching up. We're celebrating 500 plus episodes of the Bladtcast. And Bladtcast episodes are, if not nothing, they're very long. If nothing else, they are very long. But so semi-ironically, I'm looking at this episode as the 2 Minutes Hate from 1984 by George Orwell, which in the long stretch since we did our previous episode, I've been able to, I had it at 10 minutes of hate. 2 minutes does not seem like enough hate. Jeff, if you were going to unleash some hate, do you think you could get it done in 2 minutes?
That reminds me of a question that you asked Will on a previous episode about how you thought that if he might hurt somebody if he had super strength. My first thought was how I'd rip my own dick off.
By accident.
By accident, obviously.
Yeah,
Definitely by accident.
Just because you're so strong.
Yeah. Just by accident, you know.
By accident.
Aggressive masturbate.
Yeah. Well,
So I think that's what I would do with my 2 minute hate.
Yeah. So Will, am I correct? Did you hate the current season of Stranger Things, or did you just think it was too long?
No, just too long.
It's just too long. Okay.
Was I talking shit about it so much?
No, I think that your comment about the running time made me think you hated it.
No.
Because everybody was raving about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Will hates it. I love that. Even though I would make you talk about it in a way that I wouldn't understand because I haven't seen it since the middle of the second season. But
yeah, I enjoyed large parts of it, but I genuinely felt like being allowed to format television as essentially 9 movies is cheating. Like, it's not a show. You know what I mean? You're not writing for television when Netflix is like, yeah, your finale can be 2.5 hours. I'm like, cool, The Dark Knight is your season finale. Like, that's, you just get all that time to do all that shit. Like, I do think that there's something of the craft of television writing that when a streamer says, here's like $20 million an episode, it can be 90 minutes or 2 hours, whatever you want, is not succinct television. And I think better quality writing comes sometimes from living in parameters.
No, and look, I think it's great when a streaming series like has an episode and you're like, oh, this one's 67 minutes. And it's like, okay, you just had that much story.
The season 3 finale was like an hour and 20, and I was like, this is awesome. Yeah.
I get infuriated when a show is 38 minutes and I'm like, is it a half hour where it just went a little long, or is it an hour where it went a little short?
All the Star Wars shows, you're like, this is
Star Wars
55
shows
minutes,
do that. Some of the Marvel shows have done that. And Disney Plus is guilty of the 38-minute hour.
Yeah.
But that's probably how they pay their employees. What were you going to say, Jeff?
If you were looking for somebody to hate on the most recent season of Stranger Things, Volume 2 was a big letdown.
Oh,
which is just 2 episodes. Well,
don't talk about it in spoiler terms.
2 movies worth of letdown.
Can you? Can you talk about it in a general way as to what you didn't like about it?
I think it's really. I don't think it spoils anything to say some of my problems with it. I don't think Millie Bobby Brown has aged into a better actress. I think she's either stagnant or worse than she was when she started.
She's really not great. People praise her all the time.
She's fantastic in that Godzilla movie that I love. Remember how much I love that Godzilla movie?
Oh yeah, really.
Which one?
Godzilla. She was so good in it. The one where she was like, "Look at the Godzilla, it's doing the thing," and she's like, "Oh no, the Godzilla's got me." No, she was bad in that.
So she's not. So she hasn't advanced as her craft has not improved.
I don't think she's good. It's one of those things where
Well, just let me just throw in, because it made me imagine if Leonardo DiCaprio peaked in Growing Pains and he acted exactly like that throughout the rest of his career.
Pretty much. Well, it's
Was Eating
like
Gilbert great?
whatever she does, however she seems to project herself in her normal life is her ability to act, right?
Mhm.
Like she projects herself when that first season came out as this like shy, a little like, no, I don't know, I'm apprehensive, but I'm nice. And people were like, oh, how endearing. And I was one of the people who was like, oh, she seems sweet. And then it was like, I think by the second season came around, she was so like loved from that first one. She's like, I'm cool. Look at me being cool now. And then that has just gone from there. It's like, to me, when I see some of the choices that she makes as an actress and some of those things, it reflects to me somebody who can't be told that's a bad idea because they think they know better than other people. And so it was just like a lot of her choices, a lot of her like, it's just, I don't know, it's falling flat for me. But I also don't think it's just her. I think the writing has gotten bad. I think,
Let me ask, does she still like waffles? Because if she doesn't, I'm not going to watch it.
yeah, I think she likes waffles. They decided to start this season out where they have her have a huge regression in personality and ability to interact. It's kind of weird. Like she goes from seeming like, borderline competent by the end of the third season to like, oh, are we friends? Friends? Are you my friends? And it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Is she doesn't really talk like that, but it's just like her level of naivete is just like embarrassing and stupid, and it doesn't serve the character.
So you like the first part of the season?
I thought it was a lot better.
Okay.
I was getting into it. I was into their setups. I predicted, as per usual, like everything that was going to happen, because they don't hold their cards close to the chest. They let you know what's going to happen. Like, and they foreshadow, and it's like never a red herring. It's what's going to happen. And that's fine, but it's just like it becomes very predictable. But then all their payoffs, because it was a lot of Millie Bobby Brown, and she just like, they had kind of kept her stuff a little bit like more minimal in the first half of the season, or the first volume of the season. And then she's a big focus for those 2 episodes. So I think that is part of why I didn't like it. That some of the things that happen are just ridiculous. Like there's somebody who gets shot through the heart.
Oh,
and you're like, oh, you're dead. And then they like get up and they're like doing things for a little bit and talking after that. And it's like, you were shot in the heart. You shouldn't have had them shot through the heart if we're supposed to like have you get up and talk to them.
Thank you. Because I was about to point out that whoever that character was, they do indeed give Love a bad name.
That's true.
That's also just a true thing about that character.
I realized I asked, like, who was that? I was like, oh, no, that'd be a spoiler, I guess.
Yeah, that would definitely be a spoiler. So when people are raving about how great it is, you're just feeling like, yeah, but why don't you take however many hours of content there is? My friend Alexa, who I know, Will, you've met, she was just like, just have the same hours of show, but divide it up differently. Just like have more episodes. But I know that gets into like probably budgeting things. You probably have to pay the actors more if they do like 12 episodes.
Right. You make them work twice as much.
But that's kind of shitty.
It is kind of shitty. I mean, I know that they were dumping a lot of money into it. I thought it was too busy. I mean, I think some of the joy of that show is this cast of characters that they've created that's like expanded a little bit slowly. But in this one, there's just like a lot of people, and they're all trying to give everybody like pretty equal screen time. And it's very busy. It doesn't need to be that long. I do also like, there are some things like Jeff was saying, like major inconsistencies where I was like, are they going to address this? Like the thing with the hammer, Jeff, and the feet and you know what I mean? I was like, so is his ankle broken? Is it like, it's a major thing that like allows a character to do something big, and then he's just fine after that. And I'm like, so no one cares that this doesn't make any sense after this, and this person is perfectly all right. So there's a lot of moments where they just like are like, what are they gonna fucking do? We're Stranger Things. Is kind of how it feels. And I'm like, I really think you guys still need to understand the confines of the sandbox in which you are playing, and you can't say you get to do whatever you want just because Netflix gave you $20 million per episode or however much.
it reminded me of Wonder Woman 1984 insofar as, because we're set in the 80s, we can use 80s TV logic. It's fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
He's fine.
Yeah, we have an A-Team script from Stephen J. Cannell. We're just going to change the character names and put Wonder Woman in it instead of Mr. T, and it's going to work out perfectly fine. So, Will, would you say that the most recent season, or broken into 2 parts, whatever, of Stranger Things, was it fine, or was it actually even better than that? You just didn't know why it was so long.
There were moments that were better than fine. I mean, like, I enjoyed it by and large, but it is one of those things where reflecting on it, I'm like, yeah, I have more problems when I think back on it. And some of those things in the moment, but really, I remember by the time I got to that, like the second to the last couple episodes are like an hour and 15. The second to last episode is like 90 minutes. And then that last episode is 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I was like, what are you guys even fucking doing? Do you have any, it really could have been a solid 9 episode hour. Like, it could have been written in a much tighter, better way, but I don't know why they thought that they needed to have this insane, unbounded story where Netflix was like, you don't have to edit any of these scripts at all. Just shoot them exactly as is. And here's Fistfuls. I mean, it's clearly working for them because it's very popular and most people like it. It's certainly not bad. I think it's probably, I thought season 2 was my least favorite season. This might just be, it's not that it's like bad. It's just fucking tedious. It's like too hard to rewatch now. I don't have fucking 20 hours to rewatch season 4 alone. You know, like it's just, it's so much content. And I actually thought season 3 was so good. Sort of more of the original energy of the first season than season 2 was, that it was just such a delightful season that it's just chaotic and kind of too sad. And I hate it when characters are like not together and they spend way too much time coming back together, and it takes them the whole season really to come back together. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. I just want these people to be with each other. That's the whole thing that makes the show work and is special. Just make it happen. And now they're like, well, in season 5, they already got together, so we don't have to restart. And I'm like, they kept saying like, building these teasers to the final episodes like it was some big finale, and then of course the whole time the bad guy's going, this is just the beginning, and you're like, Jesus God, this is just the beginning? What other fucking Thanos person is out there that's gonna
get to the how about we get to the end?
Well, that's what me and Casey were like, watching these trailers, we're getting to this last episode, and I'm like, I feel like the show should be over after this, the way that they're doing this. Like, this, if they were saying this is the end of the season, I'd be like, fine, you guys get 2-hour episodes, like fucking whatever you want to do. But they were like, no, this is there's still one more season. And I was like, okay, what is that going to be? 3-hour episodes?
Yeah. Well, how about the fact that the last episode, all 2 hour, 20 minutes of it, ends like the third Lord of the Rings
Oh my
movie.
God,
Jesus
over and
Christ.
over and over again. I was like, oh, so many people were like, oh, that scene with Dustin, I was like, was fucking corny and horrible and not needed. It was, it made me cry. And I'm like, of course it did. It's just like, they knew what they were doing. And it was like clickbait, basically.
I think that a lot of shows and movies make that mistake of like, you know how you like all these people together? Yeah, we're going to split them up. I've talked a little bit about how for the first time in probably more than a decade, I'm watching the original Star Wars trilogy because Felix, by the time people see this now, 7-year-old son, I finally talked him into watching it with me. When I first asked him last fall, he was like, no, that's a big kid show. And he thought he was going to be scared. And I've made the point on this podcast before. He had seen the Jungle Cruise movie in the theater, and that is much scarier than Star Wars. And also, like, I don't know, like 100 times worse. It was terrible. It was a terrible movie.
The Rock just looks so silly in that costume with that little hat. And he's so big that I'm like,
he's so big.
Back then, how are you that buff? Are you lifting boats? And what are you eating? Like, why?
Children. He's eating children.
that would actually make sense.
So goofy in that.
But the interesting thing about watching the original Star Wars trilogy, I've talked about this before with a kid for the first time, is you kind of forget what kids connect to. And his favorite character, hands down, was R2-D2. He thinks R2-D2 is really funny. Like when the Jawas like zap him and he falls over, he laughed like I did when I saw Gilbert Gottfried saying, you know, his story on the Aristocrats, you know? So like, it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. And he loves C-3PO and just his his like A-level sass, his just bitchiness, like, you go that way, it's too rocky. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I can see how that's so funny. And then I guess it made me understand how, Will, as a boy, you saw Phantom Menace, what, 8 times? And you probably had no hate in your heart for Jar Jar Binks, did you? As a young man, either of you, I guess. I mean,
I know I didn't,
yeah.
but
Will's gonna have to come back. Yeah, his connection got messed up, so he'll come back in a little bit. Yeah,
gotcha. But so you were just talking about Felix loving the droids. It just gave me this idea that I think would be hilarious. Again, a mockumentary of like somebody interviewing the droids from Star Wars, but it's like not the actors, the droids themselves. And it's like R2D2 talking, like beeping about how he was a big fan of Buster Keaton and like a big fan of physical comedy. So he liked to like time his pratfalls specifically to the parsec.
I think that it's just because they are funny, but you don't think that's not how I think of those movies. Is like, oh, the droids sure are funny, but I mean they totally are. But the reason I brought them up is that they're not separated for very long. They're gone. They're apart for like 5 minutes, and then in Empire Strikes Back, it's like 10, maybe even 15 minutes. It's like, yeah, don't keep them apart for too long, So. But you don't seem like you were so disgusted with season 4 of Stranger Things where you won't be back to see how it ends, right?
No, I mean, again, I'll watch it. I was enjoying the first volume of it, right? The first half of the season. I got into it. I was very much enjoying it, and I just felt like the payoffs, because they were setting up the payoffs, and then the payoffs themselves just didn't do it for me. And maybe that's part of the problem. Like, that's what I thought was maybe you shouldn't have separated the season. Maybe you should have finished all your episodes and released it all at once, because part of the problem is you got me to like binge the first half of your season, right? And then I had to wait a fucking month. So I'm going to have all sorts of expectations and ideas and things. And then when they don't get paid off in at least the ways I'm looking, and frankly, I just don't think they got paid off well.
Yeah.
Disappointment. And I think that disappointment would have been mitigated if I hadn't created more expectation with that extra amount of time to wait.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of catching up to do, so it's going to be a while before I can weigh in on any of this. But I've heard that season 3 was good, and then there are those people who are raving about this season. So at some point, I'm going to get to it. I basically, my wife and I had started season 2 separately because she was working in New York. And then we were like, okay, we'll watch the rest of it together. Just tidying up our thoughts on how I fell behind in Stranger Things. It seems like I will get through it maybe in time for season 5. So Will, you're saying you don't really know where it's going to go, but it's not like you're opposed to checking out more. I mean,
I'll finish it. I remember reading an article recently that the Duffer Brothers are like, our 5th season is going to like, they even said it's going to feel a lot like Return of the King. There's just going to be so many endings. And I was like, you already fucking did that.
You did that.
You already did that. Please don't do it again.
Yeah.
Like it's going to feel even worse. I like those characters. I like the design. I think it's fun. And it's like, it's definitely not a heavy lift emotionally as a show. Like the season was pretty dark for sure. Like it was definitely Nightmare on Elm Street inspired to a certain point where like there's a big nod, you know what I mean? Like to an Elm Street. But I appreciate that every season kind of has their like homage. Like the last season was sort of like the blockbuster, like Back to the Future and Jaws and things. And this one is like very horror. So I'm curious to see what happens. But there is something like, it is kind of a bummer when a show that starts kind of whimsical with like adorable kids becomes this like really sad, depressing thing where you're like, I kind of like the lightheartedness a little bit. Can we do that again? Like Doctor Who, when it gets too serious for a while, you're like, I like the clothes and the Scrooge, the whimsy, like that's what I want to see.
And then it has more merit, whether it's that show or Doctor Who or another, when you have occasional serious episodes, but you mix it in with dinosaurs on a spaceship and you have fun. You know what
Futurama,
I mean?
with that episode where Fry finds his old dog.
Yeah.
Makes you cry every time.
Yeah.
It's the saddest ending of a show ever.
That's why you gotta mix it up and do that. So Will, you mentioned that you tried the Obi-Wan Kenobi show for Disney Plus, and you bailed after 3. I
Yeah.
did a whole show on it, and I talked about how I had the unique experience where I was able to binge it over like a 2-day span, and I feel like that helped me
Ugh.
because I wasn't like, I wasn't thinking about it for a week. I was like, all right, let's just get through to see how it ended. I for the most part liked it, and it made me think like, what, maybe those prequels aren't as terrible as I remember.
Mm.
And after the entirety of the sequel trilogy, I've said this before, I think some of us might need to apologize to the prequels just a little. But Jeff, I haven't talked to you at all about Kenobi. Have you seen it, and what did you think?
I did see it. I thought it was fine. I think Disney. I really liked Moon Knight, but outside of that, I don't think Moon Knight and Loki are the 2 best things they've done.
By the way, if you like Moon Knight, I still have it down here.
Nice.
This is the first 6 issues is a story arc called Lunatic. And this is from the complete collection from 2015 or 2016, and so it has that part. The interesting thing about Moon Knight is, thank God Oscar Isaac is in that show because he's so good, and the Ethan Hawke is also good. The rest of the show is okay. I think with another actor, and that's they can be very smart and do stuff like that. In general, I liked it. I've been somewhat surprised at how many people I've talked to who watched it and even had familiarity with the character. I think that these obscure Marvel characters are a bit more of an uphill climb. Moon Knight strikes me as one that I would tell Will, like, I would say, don't watch Moon Knight.
And I watched the whole goddamn thing, and I didn't like it. I was like, God, fuck.
See,
when is the Moon Knight going to show up? Where is the Moon Knight?
That's a big part of Moon Knight is, where is Moon Knight?
Yeah.
Couldn't we have some more of either version of him? But
I'm
there's
fine.
Not enough.
But I see, that's the thing. I was fine with less Moon Knight because we've had enough action. We had fucking Endgame. We had the cum shot of like people with powers getting it on. Like, we don't need as much of that. We can pull back a little and meet some humanity. That's what I thought was good in Moon Knight. Like you said, I enjoyed Oscar Isaac's.
Yeah.
It did take a while. Yes, it's slow. I think Disney Plus in general has a pacing problem with every single one of their shows. I don't think any single one of their shows that I've watched flows really well, start to finish.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the payoffs with Moon Knight because that's all I can judge their shows are on is their payoffs. I liked the payoffs with Moon Knight. I appreciated the, last couple episodes and when we really delved into, the characters, who they were, what was going on, right? His backstory with his mom and the brother and everything else.
I like that they saved Jake, the taxi driver, for the very end. I was starting to think that might be what they were doing. And I'm like, there's like a whole part of the character they're not dealing with. I'm like, oh, you know what? That's kind of cool if there is another season. But yeah, it was not my favorite. I know what you're saying about pacing. In general, I feel that the Marvel shows don't always end particularly well. Hawkeye was the most disappointing for me personally of all of them. It just the way it ended. I thought it was like mostly fun, and I thought Kate Bishop was great, and getting Florence Pugh in there. But the one that I've liked that I thought was the best for me, just because it worked beginning to end, was Ms. Marvel. Because it's just like you take Peter Parker's story and you just sort of place it in this other setting, as in Jersey City, which is a whole different planet. But I'm not going to tell anybody to watch it because I know people who don't. Yeah, like my friend Zia, she hated the Runaways, she hated Cloak and Dagger. She's like, I just don't really have the patience for the kid stuff. I'm like, well, there's a lot of that in here, but I think it's great casting. I really like the character, and I thought that story worked the most for me. But it seems like Jeff has a thought.
It started good. It's because it started off like a ripoff of Into the Spider-Verse, which was fun.
That's fair. Yeah.
But the thing that I found incredibly distracting the whole time was Iman Vellani, the main actress, felt like she was just doing a Haley Steinfeld impression. And it was just like...
the name I couldn't come up with for Kate Bishop, yes.
Yeah. So it was just like, at a certain
AKA
point,
Bumblebee's friend, by the way, is
Yes,
also
that's
what
right.
I call her.
Yeah.
So it just felt like, okay, well, you already literally cast Haley Steinfeld in this thing. And if they're going to end up teaming up, that's just going to be super fucking boring, where they're the same personality with different, one with no powers because she can shoot a bow, and she's even less interesting than Hawkeye.
Yeah,
I
she's
hate
like
Kate
a less
Bishop.
talented Hawkeye.
She's stupid. She's a
Yeah.
stupid character.
Much like how
Not a
Jeremy
fan.
Renner was a less born.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of the
I
same
forgot
thing.
about that Bourne movie.
Most people do. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
Jason Bourne.
Will, I definitely wouldn't tell you to watch Ms. Marvel.
I saw your post on Jonathan.
I really
London,
liked
the
it, though.
Geekscape. You were like,
Yeah.
it's like the most complete Marvel like storytelling. I was like, oh, maybe I should watch it. And then you're like, oh, Zia said it's a little bit too much for kids, and I was like, I'm out.
Because
I don't want to
she's
do the
in-
Disney.
Yeah, she's in high
kids
school,
shit.
so they have to build this world that she lives in. But the family stuff, I think, is really strong, casting wise, writing wise, all that.
Is it produced
and-
like a Marvel, like proper Marvel content, or is it a little bit cheaper looking? Because
No,
it's
it's
more for
not.
kids?
See, that's the thing that I would say about Runaways and Cloak and Dagger. Those were cheaper because
Yeah,
those were
the
like the
Hulu
old
budgets or whatever.
iteration of Marvel Television that wasn't the Marvel Studios Kevin Feige Marvel Television.
Right.
And Jeff, you correct me if you feel like no, it did. I felt like effects wise and in terms of budget, I mean, there's some like big stuff in terms of there's a whole episode that's set in a different era that I think that they did a nice job with. And even though they didn't convince me that Atlanta looked like Jersey City, I think that there was enough other stuff where they like went to Thailand to pretend it was Karachi, and it was like, all right, close enough. There wasn't too much of that though. Whereas like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you always you saw the price tag on the costumes because they were going to return it after they were done shooting. You felt like a lot of these other things were cheap that they did. But
frankly, it seemed like they spent more budget on Miss Marvel, justifiably, than they did on Moon Knight. There was a lot of CGI in Moon Knight that just looked cheap and shitty, especially earlier in the season. Yeah. So it did seem like that, they put a lot into this. I didn't hate it. I just felt like it didn't go anywhere. Like the payoff, the best episode is the flashback episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final.
Wait, of which one? Moon Knight or
no, Miss Marvel.
Yeah, I agree.
Both of them, I guess, in some ways. But, I just didn't, the payoff, the final episode specifically, like the finale of Miss Marvel was just like, maybe last episode should have been your finale. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then that's the problem too. Is it's like, well, we've got to move pieces around the game board for what's coming next. So Will, it's tough because we'll get back to Obi-Wan in a little bit, but just because where the conversation has flown,
Can we also talk about that other thing that I fucking loathe?
No, we're gonna get. Yeah, that's where I'm going now. Actually,
good. Okay.
So. And there was a point where I thought I was going to tell you that you would probably have enjoyed Eternals because of the scale that it was on to watch on Disney Plus, never in the theater. I was never going to tell you to watch it in the theater. But then enough people didn't like it. And it's just like, I don't know. It was just this like really ambitious, diverse cast. And there's like grand storytelling that is like tangentially. And then I was like, you know what? I don't think now, when it comes to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, my initial comment to you was, I think you should listen to the score.
Yeah.
Because I thought you would like the Danny Elfman score. Was that not the first thing I said to you?
I do think that was the first thing you said. Yeah. And the Raimi-ness of it. You're like, I think you'll like the Sam Raimi-ness of it.
And I think that there's the Raimi moments in Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness, which I assume, Jeff, you've seen that. I know it's been on Disney Plus for a while. The Raiminess is why my wife has not seen it. We had a friend who worked at Disney who saw it even before I did. And now I can see it early. But and he was like, yeah, it's actually kind of a horror movie. And my wife was like, oh, thank God I don't need to see it. She was like, I've told the story before that there was a point a few years ago where my wife hadn't worked in a little while, and like an opportunity came up where she could have she wasn't like necessarily going to be hired, but she didn't even want to put her name into consideration for a horror show because she's like, no, I can't live in that.
Was it
world.
American Horror Story? If so, she dodged a bullet. It's okay. It's
American. Yeah, I know they always have like names like Hotel.
Yeah.
It was this one, I believe, was American Horror Story Bus Station. So she
phone
probably did
booth.
dodge a bullet.
Where Colin
So-
Farrell is in the phone booth again for
Yeah.
10 episodes. Yeah.
I think that shows a little nationalist, frankly. I'm more interested in Southeast Asian horror stories.
You know
I
what?
would watch that. I really would watch that.
I agree with you, Jeff. So there were things that I thought worked about Doctor Strange, and I wasn't like, look, there's things that I've seen, and I'll tell you, I'm like, I don't think that one's for you. But I was like, yeah, I think you would probably like it. But clearly I was wrong. And I was surprised that you actually walked out of it, because I mean, there are movies that, I mean, however you feel about that movie, I'm sure there's movies that I've hated more, that I like, Battleship, that I've watched.
Battleship.
Yeah, right. I mean, like,
what a terrible movie.
It's a terrible movie, but they
Just
did
like
have.
they
I had a
came
full
up with
bucket
the
of
point.
popcorn, Jeff. How was I going to leave with my full bucket of popcorn?
No, but like, really, with that movie, it's the just the level of mental gymnastics somebody went through with, like, okay, how do we cram Battleship into this horrible aliens movie we've got? I've got it. They're advanced alien ships that travel the universe. They can only move in diagonal square pegs in a grid pattern.
You sunk my battleship.
Oh, you sunk my alien ship.
I don't know who it was recently was like, Battleship was like way more fun than it should have been. Like, somebody just recently like said that they enjoyed Battleship, and I was like, really?
Was it Rihanna?
I never watched it.
Rihanna probably had fun. So, you know, I don't take joy in the fact. Look, I knew you weren't going to love it, but I didn't think that I was, you know, I kind of like half-heartedly said, like, yeah, I think you would like the raminess of it.
Yeah.
But I was just way off in that respect.
Yeah. It was, I think I texted you on my walk back after leaving the theater in a fit, in all caps, "You lied to me."
And I had to think about it for a second. I'm like,
what?
I'm like, yeah, it's really only 6.5 inches, but what is he talking about? But you know, and yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
There's a comment that Elizabeth Olsen made that I think almost, like, to me, informs me a part of what's wrong with that movie, where she talks about, like, no, I don't see Scarlet Witch or whatever as like a bad guy or villain, where it's like, you're a villain. You were very, very villain. You're
very bad.
Brutally murdered people in ways like where you intentionally wanted them to suffer.
Yeah.
You're a villain.
Jim from The Office never deserved that to happen to him.
Yes, he did. All those fucking guys did. Those guys sucked.
No, just Dwight. I would have liked to have seen that happen to Dwight.
When that dude's head exploded, I was so fed up at that point. I laughed out loud like a crazy person. Yeah. There's only like 5 other people in the theater, and they're probably like, "What is this guy's fucking problem?" I could not stop laughing.
He stormed out. He's gonna go blow up someone's head.
It was so funny.
Was it as loud as Natasha during Aquaman?
Louder. I think louder.
I really want to watch Aquaman 2 with Natasha when it comes out, by the way. Even if I don't know how we make it happen, but I want her input. So so clearly that would fall under the category of 2-minute hate, because you wish you had walked out after 2 minutes of Doctor Strange.
I think I've reached like age-wise, and now it's like it really is beginning with certain things I'm watching, like not really caring about finishing Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm like at that point now where I'm like, why do I just force myself to finish shows or seasons or movies, where I'm like, if I don't like something, I should probably just not watch it and waste my time. And that in that movie, I was just like, I thought it was so awful and the writing was so bad. And it really, I think the biggest thing that pissed me off was that her character, in my opinion, should not have been the villain. They gave her all this work. They did all this work on her in WandaVision to make her more of a hero in a way that, yes, she becomes the Scarlet Witch, but she didn't become a fucking bad guy. And then she's looking for her kids in the end. I was like, that'll be a fun story to follow. And then it was this, where she's just like brutally. And I was like, this does not track with the 8 episodes I watched and the empathy and the kindness with which we showed this character, that now she's ripping people apart and like eviscerating whole. I'm like, well, this is not this.
I mean, she did, pull the strings of an entire town just so she could, fuck her dead boyfriend robot.
But they found some weird way to make that like
No,
makes
I agree.
sense
She
with
was
you know,
somehow
like
sympathetic
But
in that setting, but not in
part
this. What were you going to
because
say, Jeff?
because in part, if I'm remembering correctly, in that show they resolve all of that by a literal conversation between her and her imagined dead boyfriend,
Yeah.
wherein he talks to her about loss and grief and basically accepting
That's true.
loss as a part of accepting the love that you had for these things. So
Yeah.
the best part of that show was that conversation for me, and they threw it out the window and stomped on it to make one Multiverse of Madness.
It really should have been a Wanda movie where she's looking for her kids, and Doctor Strange should have been the B character, and they could have had some fun adventures. Instead, they made her the bad guy in his movie. He's not that interesting to watch. I don't think his performance as that character is really all that special. He's more fun in the Avengers movies when he's just like one of many.
Well, yeah, when
I
he's
thought,
like refilling Thor's beer repeatedly, I'm like, yeah, that's how he should be doing card tricks.
Magic tricks. Yeah. Benedict Wong was a much better lead, a much better written and performed character. I was like, make him, he's the Sorcerer Supreme.
I mean, he is the Sorcerer Supreme.
Let's make him the lead of this movie, or Wanda, and then Doctor Strange can just sort of like be around and fucking bring back Tobey Maguire. Like, we've already introduced this, and I will say the one thing musically that I was like, nice, was Danny Elfman sampled a cue from the animated X-Men cartoon when Xavier comes out in his little chair, because that's supposed to be the animated Xavier, right?
Yeah, that's supposed to be which iteration of him it is.
Too.
Because of the chair that you see.
Right.
What did you say, Jeff?
Spoiler for Ms. Marvel.
Oh, for Ms. Marvel, yeah. Yeah, there's a moment, right, which was also...
I'm not going to watch it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah.
They basically tell her she's a mutant, and then they play that same little cue.
Very,
very likely, yeah.
And that theme is called the X-Men 97 theme. That's way it's listed in the credits of Multiverse of Madness and in Ms. Marvel, is because that's the new show. The animated show is going to be X-Men 97. So it's like, yeah, let's call it that.
Yeah.
And actually, someone I know is working on it, and I'm like, I have so many questions for you, but I know I can't ask any of them, you know? So before we circle back to some of Will's thoughts on it, Jeff, it seems like you didn't love Multiverse of Madness either.
No, who would have? It was just...
Okay, I didn't love it, but I did go see it a second time because I felt like
I didn't walk out or hate it like that, but I didn't
pay for it either time. Yeah. But I was like, all right, I want to kind of, analyze it in a different way. But anyway, what were you going to say, Jeff? I didn't mean to
it just, it just wasn't good. It just wasn't that interesting. Stephen Strange is a character. It took you 8 years to make a sequel for his movie. And the character's 2016 to 2022.
Yeah.
So it's, because November versus like the beginning. So like 7-ish, but it's like it's been a long time, and the character is somewhat stagnant, and we're calling back to a relationship we don't give a shit about. If you didn't watch the What If show, then you don't care about his relationship with
I did watch the What If show. That is the only good episode, and I still didn't give a shit about it.
Exactly.
But,
could not.
Do you agree with me, Jeff, that the character would be better if they just let him use his British accent? Just fucking let him be British.
Yeah. There's no reason for him not to be British.
It hurts my ears to hear him talk.
He'd be better British. Why don't we have this global diversity that you want? You have everybody else who's not British speaking with a British accent, and you won't let the fucking British guy do it.
Since the beginning of the fight, when the first trailer for Doctor Strange came out, I realized he was American. My whole childhood, I thought he was British because he looks so fucking British.
Right?
That like when I was like, oh my God, they cast Benedict Cumberbatch. Amazing. I love that voice. Love that accent. And then it was American, and I was like, this is fucking horrible. What is this?
No, Wanda, I'm not here to talk to you about New Jersey. But Will, now you're never going to get the answer, which you've been talking about almost the entire run of this podcast. You still don't know. Why is he so strange?
I don't know.
You're just going to have to just live life not knowing.
It really felt like such a paycheck for Sam Raimi, where he was like, I'll make another Marvel movie. I was like, okay, did you show up? How much did
Scott
you show
Derrickson fell out. That's always the story for Marvel, is that they didn't want to pay somebody. But what were you going to say, Jeff?
I think you could have resolved some of the issues people have with the Wanda Maximoff left turn if you had made it a Wanda from a different universe that had been manipulated by Agnes after she realized she couldn't manipulate this Wanda. Like if she was the one using the dark magic to try to maybe communicate to a different alternate dimension and speak to this other Wanda who's like that Wanda, but who didn't have that conversation or didn't have the same resolution, right? Like if she reached out to a different one that didn't have the resolution we saw for the WandaVerse Vision, but was stuck in the grief in an alternate dimension, that would make more sense, right? Like if WandaVision wasn't a resolution for Wanda, but a falling down the spiral into madness, that would make more sense as the character arc for this villain that we had in that movie. And you could maybe explain that by having this person who's aware of the Darkhold and dark magic, using said dark magic like apparently Stephen Strange does in every other dimension, to talk to a different version, like, right? Like, and again, we've established this witch character. You could use her for something like
Doctor Strange and the gradual descent into madness.
Yeah.
This is kind of strange. This is even more strange. Oh, this is
the only thing
strange.
that would have made it better is if at the very end of Multiverse of Madness, he goes and they say, Doctor, you're actually the one in the madhouse, and then it's just a bunch of things that say no, straight out of the cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
I think that they should have called it Doctor Strange, Strangest Things. So then he would have one-upped another franchise, being like, here's the strangest things.
Yeah.
So Jeff, it just didn't work for you at all, and that's why after I saw Thor: Love and Thunder, I was starting to think like, I mean it was fun, but it's not great. So I'm like, am I just a bad judge? So I like ask people, and they're like, no, it's fun, it's fine, it's a fourth movie, just go and have fun with it, whatever, and don't try and do too much with it. And I think that's probably why it works. This movie was definitely like working, like we got to deal with multiverses and all this crazy stuff. And the scene that people talk about is this scene with like all the like interesting cameos of alternate versions of characters. I mean,
just such a waste. What a dumb waste. I love Mr. Fantastic Four is like I'm just all I've ever wanted was there to be a decently pretty good version of that movie or show. And then even with like John Krasinski, I was like, oh, they did that weird fan thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he dies immediately in a very silly way. And I was like, oh, sweet. I think it was shortly after that I walked out because I was like, this is just fucking preposterous, and I hate every minute.
That was my concern. Was I'm like, wait, did you not see Patrick Stewart? Because I was like that. No, once you saw him, I'm like, whatever.
The John Krasinski cameo was spoiled. You read enough on the internet by accident, stuff's gonna happen. I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. That was spoiled for me. By the time I got there, I was like, I'm glad that this was spoiled. This movie fucking sucks.
Have you heard the new Fantastic Four internet spoiler rumor? Whatever.
No. And as we're talking, they haven't had their big Marvel Studios Hall H premiere, which I think they're going to bring the cast of Fantastic Four out for that. So if I'm wrong, you can laugh at me. What's that?
Yeah, so
they've already cast it.
It's one of the casts. One of the casts has one of the name of.
So somebody in the cast has talked about how they're in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't know. I don't know.
There's a rumor about somebody who's going to ultimately be in the movie that's going to be in another Disney Plus show as a cameo. So they would likely be announced as part of that cast, and then it would be a thing.
Do they know which Fantastic Four character it is?
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you what the little rumor
I don't want to know. I don't
want to
know what it is.
I don't know if it's true. I just heard some
Well,
random thing.
if we're going to learn tomorrow, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, by the time people hear it. I had the John Krasinski thing spoiled by my friend Michael, who I do my Marvel show with. He texted me like a TMZ link. Hey, did you see this? I'm like, no, I didn't see that.
Why?
Like, take out of this for a second the fact that you didn't like the movie. But I'm like, it was like I'm seeing it like tomorrow.
Yeah,
like
that's
you couldn't
shitty.
like not send me that.
That's
and
shitty.
like he didn't try to ruin like that. That was just more like, oh, I just figured it was out there and you knew. I'm like, I didn't. And
it's funny.
There was a cameo at the end of Eternals that was kind of like a fun casting thing. He also ruined that for me too. That was like live on a show. He just mentioned it. I'm like, what are you doing?
I remember when I first saw No Way Home, I knew you'd seen it at that point, like probably twice, like at least advanced a bunch of. But I texted you and I said like Andrew Garfield really stole the show. And as soon as I sent that text, I was like, oh my god, what if for some reason I was like, wait, did he? I'm pretty sure he saw it.
This was the one that I missed.
Yeah.
And he did, by the way, Andrew Garfield. But yeah, he should have been in Doctor Strange. He should have been Doctor Strange. How about that?
I would have much preferred that. Andrew Garfield also as a Mr. Fantastic would be great too.
I feel like Andrew Garfield is one of those. He was a great cast. He was great casting as Spider-Man and just completely wasted by the stories and directors that they paired him with.
But do you remember the other thing about him, Jeff? There's
that he loves lasagna and hates Mondays. Doesn't work a single one. And all that carbo loading is how he's able to be so agile.
3-day weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. So neither of you liked that. And like, I don't know, that's not the one where I felt like when it was over, I'm like, oh, it's probably just me. I'm probably like the big homer for it. I felt more like that about Thor, which, I don't know. Unlike the fourth movie in any franchise, it's like, okay, just think of it like a TV show. It's like, oh, look, it's the season premiere. You're just hanging out with some friends and like, you know what? If Fast and Furious, if you love those movies and you want to see them go into space, great. Go. I've seen a half an hour of one of them, but for everybody else, go enjoy. It's fine. So
you're saying I don't need to rush to the theater to see Thor 4?
No, it'll be on Disney Plus at this point in like a month. So,
great. I'll just do that.
See it done.
I saw it. It was funny, but that's all.
I mean, I'd heard that Christian Bale is like people they'll consider him like the best Marvel villain or something.
That's a little much considering how much screen time he has. He's not. It's not enough of a character. There's not enough time spent with him. But of course, the scenes that he has and the stuff that he has is good. It's got good gravity.
He does more with the character than I thought we were going to get. Like halfway through the movie, we see a little bit more of him, and I'm like, okay, there's a little bit more to this. And I was just like, somebody was like, oh, is it better than Ragnarok? I'm like, no, but it was fun. Fine.
That was such a revitalization that like for Taika
because that's where they like, oh, we know what to do with Thor. What if he's funny? Yeah,
but I also think one of the big things that this didn't have that it needed was the Hulk character. Part of what made Ragnarok great is we had the Hulk who could be both a heel and the straight man, right? Or like the silly and serious, because he could say something that was meant to be straight from him, but was funny for us as the audience. Or we could have him be like, no, I'm a Hulk. Like, I don't, shut up. And we would have to like buy it. I thought that was what was missing. And that's why we got some of the over the top jokey jokes. Like, again, they were funny, but it was just like some of the stuff is just like, okay, like they overly personify Stormbringer and his relationship with the axe.
But yet I enjoy that. But I know I
it was funny, but it just went they did too much of it, and it just hit a point where it was like, okay, so you knew this was the best joke you had, and you just leaned on it instead of being continually funny. I don't know.
It seems like Chuck the Pup is very opinionated.
I'm sorry, he's wrestling with Paul. They're playing right now.
That's all right. He just doesn't like Thor, and honestly, he was never a Natalie Portman fan. So I know that about Chuck.
I will see it at some point. Like some of those things seem interesting. I will say, watching that She-Hulk trailer, I was like,
there's one way that She-Hulk works, which is if you play it almost entirely for laughs, which I think from what I'm told that might be what we get.
Like a Harvey Birdman, but with a She-Hulk.
Yeah, because it's like there's a famous like an iconic She-Hulk run that John Byrne did, where it was just played for comedy. She knew she was in a comic book. There's a lot of like fourth wall stuff. So that's the only way it works though. So if it can be you can have moments. It's obviously it's part of the MCU. It's like, if it's more like Ant-Man than it is, where it's just like, oh yeah, just have fun. It's going to be kind of silly. I think then it'll work.
I think it'd be good if they just rip off Ally McBeal episodes and just replace the character names.
It's funny that you say that, because for years when I did a Marvel show with him at Popcorn Talk, Zach Wilson, who I know, he said that, he was like, there should be a She-Hulk show and it should be basically Ally McBeal in the MCU. And I hope that's what we get. Before we run out of time, though, I want to circle back to Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Jeff, I want to know your thoughts as someone who completed, I assume you finished all 6 episodes of the show. So what did you think of it?
It was fine.
You've said fine twice. Will has trademarked that. You're not allowed to say that.
It was okay. It was just all right. It had, the ending was good. I liked it. I liked the last little bits of conflict and stuff that we had in the last 2 episodes between Ewan and Christian.
Can I just skip to that episode? Can I just watch the last episode?
Yeah, honestly, probably.
It's
great.
It's almost like you don't deserve the payoff if you don't sit through all of it. However, that's what you'll enjoy the most. I think probably the entirety of I think it's early, so just start the last episode and you'll get to a point where there's some good performances that I've always loved Ewan McGregor. So getting to spend time with him, I was probably not going to be let down. But you felt, Jeff, that it was really like you liked maybe more the way that it ended than the earlier part of it.
It just felt like it took, it was one of those okay, you got to watch the first 4 episodes and then the things that you want to see happen. And it's almost like, no, let's just make those episodes. Let's just make it the things we want to see. We have that opportunity. Let's do that.
In which case, just make a movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 6 hours of television. Yeah.
For sure. And it's just a matter of nobody who should be watching this show should be unfamiliar with any of our main players to the point where we need to fucking explore who they are. I know who Leia is. I know who Obi-Wan is. I know who Vader is. End of conversation. I know who Senator Organa is.
Which, by the way, light spoiler, but there is nobody that is worse suited for any kind of dual, spy-related, activities than Bail Organa. I'm going to go ahead and make a recording where I say all of the most important secrets in the galaxy. Nobody's going to find that, are they?
Yeah. Just ridiculous.
Yeah. That I was just like, oh, Jimmy Smits, what are you doing?
Yeah, but Jimmy Smits in the Star Wars universe is just something really special. He just seems like himself in Star. He shouldn't be. It's almost not quite as extreme, but what's his face was in fucking Boba Fett, and you were like, what? Just rips me right
Danny
out
Trejo.
of it. Danny Trejo. Yeah. Jimmy Smits is always somebody that I'm like, wait a minute, you're here.
What were you going to say though, Jeff? Sorry.
You watch the show, and it almost makes me feel like a more interesting story would have just been the story of that Inquisitor. I can't think of the third sister, whatever her name is.
They basically called her third sister, I think.
But her story, start to finish, was the most interesting overarching plot of the whole show. And it seemed almost like if we had just made the show from her perspective, it might have been richer, because it might have told us a different or newer, it might have tread different territory than we had already tread, which is Obi-Wan, he lives in the desert, he's kind of lonely, and, he likes to cut meat, he likes to steal from his job, never gets confronted for it, no matter how obvious and blatant it is. Every time he's like, oh, everyone's stopping, I'm going to cut this big hunk of meat off. Don't watch.
Yeah, I'm like, well, clearly we're gonna get a payoff to that at some point.
Nope.
Nothing. And even when somebody tracks down his boss, oh yeah, that guy who used to always steal meat. I was like, I thought we were getting, but the third sister character, I was a little bit surprised for where they went, and I was more interested in her than I think when the show started. I felt like, oh, I've seen this character before, and I'm like, you know what, this is a little bit better. I thought the casting of young Leia was great.
I thought she was fucking horrible. That's part of why I stopped watching.
Oh, well, we don't know if they cast young Luke poorly because they didn't do enough with him, which I thought she was good. I thought she was very consistent. I could believe her growing up to being the same level of actress as Carrie Fisher when she was 18.
They should have just CGI'd like Natalie Portman from the prequels as younger,
That could
or
have worked.
from the Professional, just like motion captured. They've already done it with Peter Cushing and everybody
Yeah.
else. So
Yeah, well, it's I think that the confrontation at the end is probably the best part. And so, Will, would you say you hated that, or you were just like, I don't care enough? You're more
I just didn't
indifferent.
care. Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought it looked really cheap the first couple episodes. That third episode where they're on like the desert planet or whatever, I was like, this just looks like Ramona where I grew up, and it's not filmed particularly cinematically.
yeah,
Like even some of the costumes, like the dude like driving the truck as they like got pulled over by the stormtroopers or whatever, like
that
that
didn't look good.
Zach
costume
Braff, you mean?
looked like shit. Was that Zach Braff
That was Zach Braff.
as like the fat truck driver guy?
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
I actually did not know that.
I did not know that either.
But
Just looked
yeah,
bad, and like it just felt so low stakes in general because it didn't feel real. It felt like I was watching a Star Wars fan film. Like it felt cheap and shitty that by the time we got to like Vader when he's there, it's so not spectacular. Like he's walking around just like murdering people. You're like, okay,
yeah,
cool. And then they get to the fire part and they're just sort of like standing opposite each other. And I'm like, okay. And then they like fight a little bit and then he like puts him in the fire. And I was like, this is super lame. Like it's just not, he doesn't seem, I already watched what he could do in Rogue One and it was fucking awesome.
it was.
And now he
I
just
agree.
like stands over here and like moves you to the fire. It just looked like a fan film that I was like, I'm out. Like if people like this, I'm super happy. But the only person trying is Ewan McGregor, and it's sad to watch him as an island, and
Yeah,
everybody else around him was really
in
not
that
good.
sense, to you, he's like Harrison Ford in the Christmas special. Yeah, Harrison Ford brings it in the Christmas special. You're like, no, you're Han Solo. I don't know what
Yeah.
anybody else is in this, except for B. Arthur, who of course
Yeah.
is a national treasure.
Well, come on. And Lumpy.
But so for you, Boba Fett is followed up by another Star Wars thing that you weren't
both
into.
suck. Yeah.
So are you just like, all right, Star Wars, why don't you take a break for a little bit? Is that your feeling?
I would love them to either take a break or just make something good. Like that's actually like I like Star Wars, so I would love for there to be like more.
Are you
good
gonna
stuff.
watch the Taika Star Wars movie?
Yeah,
a Taika Waititi Star Wars movie, which
I hope
he asked Natalie Portman to be, and not knowing that she was in not remembering.
He's like, have you ever
the
done a
prequels.
Star Wars movie? She's like, yeah, I did 3.
I'm the best part of.
Oh, I'm
honestly,
sorry, you were really forgettable.
Easy mistake to make. Everybody forgot about those movies, but like, I don't know. It's like I liked The Mandalorian the first 2 seasons, and then Boba Fett was very bad. But I didn't even really care for the Mandalorian episodes in Boba Fett because they pissed me off because they weren't supposed to be there.
Yeah,
like I was
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean,
so
I thought the content of those episodes was good, but you're right. That's not.
Except for
shouldn't have been
shitty
there.
Luke. Oh, that awful Luke CGI robot voice. Just there's been so many things where like at every turn I'm like, does anybody give a shit? I think that they do, but they have a weird way of showing it, and it just seems like I just want a good movie, I'm like, wow, that was
they're not
great.
they're out of the movie business for a little while, but I think the Taika.
Is Taika doing a movie, or is
his will be a movie, I believe.
Yeah. Okay,
but I think the next thing we get is the Cassian Andor or whatever his name is.
Oh my god, I do not care. Like this is already dead. He dies. He died.
Spoiler alert: he's already dead.
They got the death. It's a sled.
Have you heard?
Sled. There, I just saved you 2.5 boobless hours.
I think they said that it's like the first. They're planning for 2 seasons for this Cassian show. The first season is 1 year, and the second season is 4 years time.
Oh yeah, I heard that.
So it's just like, why are we knowing this now? It feels like the fact that information is leaking is meant to make some sense out of like the nowhere that the show's gonna end up going.
Don't you guys?
Every other show.
Don't you like Han Solo, right? Yeah. Well, what if we had like a Han Solo character? Okay, you have me. But what if he was like not charismatic at all? Oh, that would be weird. And like he's not particularly. He's like okay looking. Oh, I kind of like that Harrison Ford. And so then he dies eventually. Like he dies at some point later. Yeah. But
he's going to die.
A whole show out of like really boring, average Han Solo. I'm like, why are they making this show? I don't understand.
I agree.
Listen,
I need the past or I need the future. No more 70 years of Bushes and Kennedys in space.
Listen, if you don't like stories about where the guy dies at the end, I got a spoiler for the Bible that you are not going to like.
Whoa. I'm just starting to read it.
Yeah,
Come
but
on.
we've never seen Jesus's childhood, the prequel to when he was 30, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
he was a great pilot when he was 8.
yeah, he was a smuggler and he did a whole bunch of crazy stuff before he,
Well,
converted and became a Jew.
As we wrap up the hate that flows through our veins and only makes us stronger as agents of the Sith, is there something coming out in the near future? Each of you just pick one so we can end on a good note that you are looking forward to, that you hope is good, or you're really convinced is going to be good. I will go first in sort of an opposite way. I saw the first trailer that I'd seen for Black Adam. Yikes. So I might get a story about walking out of a movie. Let's hope. But what about let me ask you first, Will, what's something that you know is coming up? It doesn't even have to be like later this year, just like, oh, this thing I'm excited for. It doesn't have to be franchise. Could be Aquaman 2, could be Flashpoint.
I actually don't know. I don't think that much about like what's coming out that makes me excited. I mean, maybe not. I don't. Ezra Miller seems like such a problem now. I genuinely think he is unwell and is like lighting fire to his whole life because I think he has like mental illness, but like is just on drugs and alcohol and not getting help.
Yeah,
so
I
like
think that's fair.
All the excitement of the Flash is now like buried under this like shitstorm of the shit he's going through.
You have a fix.
I want to see Michael Keaton as Batman. That's what I'm very excited about.
Right.
Just
but you
mostly
have a fix for their Barry Allen problem.
Oh yeah, everyone's like, oh, we should recast somebody else as Barry. I'm like, no, just bring in Wally. Yeah. It's a fucking Flash universe. Just pop over. Oh, it's his nephew. There he is. Now he's the Flash. Boom, done.
He's Wally.
I could do it next. I'll write it for free.
I think that it would behoove Ezra Miller to like change tactics and go with flashing. Free marketing.
It's free promotion, so every headline has the word Flash in it.
Yeah.
What's something you're looking forward to, Jeff? Something that's streaming soon, in theaters soon. I'm actually a little hard pressed for what I'm actively looking forward to because we've gotten most of the stuff I was circling for this calendar year.
I believe 2023 Oscar Academy Award winner, Clerks 3.
Oh, yes. That Jay and Silent Bob reboot. I need a do-over after that, so I hope that Clerks 3 is good. I agree.
I feel like it's going to be bad, but I will watch it.
What was the Jay and Silent Bob reboot?
It was literally that. It's called Jay and Silent Bob reboot. You could buy it for $5 online because he's stealing the Louis C.K. method of.
I'm going to give you one spoiler about it. In that film, Kevin Smith plays Kevin Smith.
Nice.
So that'll kind of give you a hint. But yeah, you know what? Now that you said it, I'm legitimately excited for Clerks 3. Talk about sequels where you just get to hang out with your old friends. I was excited to see that trailer. I don't know if it's going to be good. Look, most of those movies aren't great, but I like them anyway.
As long as he doesn't cast his daughter in it, I think there's hope. Because and I'm not even saying that to be mean, but it's just like it's one of those things where like his daughter's not a good actress, and like the nepotism that you're like making movies around her when she's actually bad at acting is like part of why your career is continuing to tank. So like, please stop. Please stop casting your horrible actress daughter.
Someone who is great at acting is our friend Will Starling of the Will Tourage and the History Rated R podcast. We will be back very soon, and we're going to do more Bladtcasting. We're going to figure out an actual live celebration. One of our most loyal fans has sent me something that we'll share all together. We'll do something live some point in the near future. But until then, people can find you where, Will? At Will Starling?
At Will Starling _ yeah, History Rated R, on Instagram, whatever. I'm going to disappear right now, actually, because I have
I know. I was going to say, this is the moment where you go. And Jeff, great to chat with you. I look forward to hearing about some of the new vinyl pickups in the near future. Is there like new releases that you're interested in, like music wise, or is it a lot of like there's so much great old music that I don't really care, about anybody who's putting stuff out?
There's definitely new releases that I like, but I think the thought process is that the old releases are like, this is pretty much the best, hopefully if I get a good copy, the best fidelity, the best preserved version of it versus the digitized versions that they keep.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you convert to an MP3, you may not know this, the reason that they call certain formats lossy versus lossless, like a wave, MP3 is considered a lossy format because if you have an MP3 file, every year it degrades. That means your MP3 loses information. So it's like, if you have a song that's stored as an MP3 and you don't listen to it for 10 years and you go back to listen to it 10 years later, it will have less fidelity and less information in that file for that song.
So is that why my MP3s from 1999 of Limp Bizkit, if I listen to them now, they suck? Is that why? It's because of
that is definitely the reason why, because Limp Bizkit is like Mozart of their times.
Look, they did it all for the Nookie. Jeff, I'm glad we got to catch up. We're going to continue celebrating Bladtcast 500 throughout the days ahead, and I'll let you in on a little secret. Our friend Matt and KC sent something that I can't keep to myself. I'm going to have to figure out a way to share it with you on the other side of the country, and just start thinking about something you like. You enjoy a nice beverage now and again, because he may have provided us with more beverages and more. So. Yeah, so we will figure out a way to celebrate in the near future, and I'm glad that you got to see Thor. I didn't want to try to talk it up too much, because I was approaching this conversation that we just finished with like, oh, I think Will hates everything now, and I'm like, no, he actually just doesn't hate everything. He just hated Doctor Strange.
I think there's been but I don't think it. I think the pandemic had such an effect on the quality of media, and that we're continuing to see the rippling effect of its quality. Like, there's just certain quality control stuff that I feel like has fallen out that we used to get. And I think part of the things you have to consider are like, and I think of this because Natasha used to work for one of these companies, movie screenings. Like, a lot of these big movies screen themselves multiple times to audiences and correct or like work on things if they get feedback that like, this isn't working. That's got to be a lot more expensive and maybe even cost prohibitive now, because people aren't going to be like, yeah, let's all cram into theaters all around the country, because people are just more like, no, I don't go to the theaters. I wait for it to stream, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that unless they can find a way to mitigate that, we may continue to see like these a lot more hit or miss quality of our content. And I also think there's a line in South Park. So you know how South Park is on HBO and Paramount Plus, right?
Yeah, they have they create original content, but then the series from Comedy Central, the episodes end up on HBO Max. Yes.
Yeah. So they had their Streaming Wars second part, and there's a, as happens sometimes with South Park, they had their little like nugget of very truth bomb or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Where they talk about all these streaming services have popped up where they're driving content, not the other way. There's not all this content. There's not all this great shows, great stuff out there to fill up all these streaming services. And so that's why we're getting this lackluster content on these streaming services, because these services are just promoting themselves or creating themselves as a means to get more money, more cash flow, but they don't actually have a bunch of talents and things that didn't have the means to get their stuff out before. They're just now like, well, now we need a bunch of old shit that's already been aired and one or two original things. Doesn't matter if they're good. We'll just promote them as we have new content.
I mean, that makes sense. And yeah, Trey and Matt, who do South Park, are, incredibly funny, but also pretty smart guys, and especially when it comes to analyzing, media. And they're right. You have it's like, well, we need to create content to fill the streaming services. And if it was like all these studios, like, God, we have so much content, we don't have anywhere to put it. I guess we need a streaming service. The quality, if that version of chicken or the egg would probably lead to better content. It's interesting to think about. I haven't seen those South Park streaming wars yet, but I did watch the Beavis and Butthead movie, and I talk about just having fun, visiting with some old friends.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't like amazing, but I didn't need it to be.
No, I mean it's funny because it's like it was exactly what it needed to be, because it's also like Beavis and Butthead have had their day and had their reboot, right? They had a reboot of Beavis and Butthead in 2012 on MTV. Yeah. So it's like we didn't need to do anything like that, but to just they explained it funnily enough with the like time travel aspect. And then
I thought that was funny. Yeah.
And then just like how different things are, which is like, our cliche. It's like another version of the member berries, right? Like, oh, look how different things are. Remember how they were when you watched this before, but now how they are now? That's so different.
Yeah. I love when the concept of white privilege is introduced to them, and how they respond to what white privilege must mean. Yeah. Well, I like to think of us as Beavis and Butthead, Jeff and I, but I'm probably the Butthead. You're definitely the Beavis of the operation. Oh wait, no, is Butthead smarter? I guess, like, slightly,
well, yeah,
right?
Beavis does Butthead is often the one abusing Beavis, and so you have to think that Butthead is there for the mo.
Yeah. Well, and if there's ever anybody who would enjoy a nice headfirst dive into a porta potty, it's my pal Jeff DeRay. And glad we had a chance to chat and celebrate, of course, 500 episodes of a podcast that I might be the only person who's heard every episode, but that's all right. I like it that way. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Please subscribe to Bladtcast YouTube channel, where you will see a video version of this and our previous episode, all in one big, overly long 2 hour and 11-minute video. BLADTCAST. Thanks so much to everybody, and we will continue celebrating. We'll have a live celebration sometime soon. So for all of that, subscribe, follow me at ChristianDMZ, and we'll see you next time on the Bladtcast.